Chapter 951 I'm sorry. Liu Furong gave a bitter smile at Aunt Liu, who still seemed confused. He told her the truth about him impersonating as Liu Zongo. Ling Lan tapped the handle of her chair with her fingers. Liu Furong finished what he wanted to say and waited agitatedly for his final judgment. Ling Lan turned and looked at Aunt Liu, who seemed shocked by what Liu Furong said. She said gently, "Aunt Liu, what do you think?" The one who was fooled was Aunt Liu. She needed to listen to her opinion on the matter too. Aunt Liu looked at Liu Furong with a complicated expression. She never expected him to be a fake Liu Zongo. The real Liu Zongo had died long ago. She thought back about the hardship she had suffered and didn't know what to do too. Hence, when she heard Ling Lan's voice, she looked at her pleadingly. Ling Lan's gentle gaze calmed her heart. How could my hardships go to waste? Aunt Liu cried and smiled at the same time. Regiment Commander, I'll listen to you. She couldn't bear to hate this man, but she didn't want to forgive him so easily too. Since she couldn't do anything to him, it's better for her to pass him to the young man who could control everything. Ling Lan stood up when she heard this. She looked at Liu Furong coldly and slowly held her hands together. Her knuckles cracked. Liu Furong felt his heart pounding when he heard those sounds. Is he going to die? He suddenly missed the other team leaders. If they were here, they would definitely plead for him and ask their regiment commander to punish him lightly. Bang! Ling Lan pressed Liu Furong on the ground with her palm. Leader Liu, I hate lies. Yet, you lied to such a good lady. Ling Lan's cold voice appeared beside Liu Furong's ears. It sounded like a voice from hell. Ling Lan was really angry. I'm sorry, regiment commander. Liu Furong bore with the pain from the huge pressure and forced the words out of his mouth. Bang! Ling Lan used her force of presence to slam Liu Furong onto the ground again. You shouldn't apologize to me. Cough. Liu Furong coughed out a mouthful of blood. The force of presence of a domain realm master was not something a Qi-Jin master like him could bear with. Liu Furong looked up into Aunt Liu's eyes and spoke with much effort. I'm sorry. Ah Yun, I lied to you. Please forgive me. Little Awa cried when she saw her father being beaten by brother Zhonghu until he vomited blood. She wanted to ask her brother Zhonghu to let her father off, but before she could plead Ling Lan, Aunt Liu hugged her. Aunt Liu had tears in her eyes. Her heart ached when she saw Liu Furong injured, but she knew that Ling Lan punished him for her sake. How could she waste his effort because of her soft-heartedness? She was not an innocent girl who didn't know what was happening anymore. Ling Lan looked at Aunt Liu in admiration. No wonder she was able to raise two good and righteous children all alone. This woman had her own opinions and morals. Her heart wouldn't waver just because of a few words. It was just like how she didn't interfere with her punishment after she decided to let Ling Lan handle it. Ling Lan started to admire this lady even more. No wonder little A Jun and little Awa were so obedient and thoughtful. However, the greater her admiration for Aunt Liu, the greater her rage towards Liu Furong. The bandages on her wrist suddenly loosened apart and tied Liu Furong up. Aunt Liu, don't worry, I'll give you an answer. Ling Lan disappeared from the room along with Liu Furong. Wang Beiyazwang turned to Aunt Liu and asked with a pale face, is this fine? He was really scared by Ling Lan's dominating aura and vicious methods. He didn't dare to say anything in her presence. After she left, he felt the pressure on his body disappearing. What's wrong with it? Aunt Liu replied calmly, that bastard would not bully them only if he knew how painful the consequences would be. From Liu Furong's statement, Aunt Liu knew Liu Furong was not Liu Zongo. He was not someone who had nothing. He had the capabilities and the merits of a high-achieving soldier. He was a perfect man in every aspect. If he didn't came to planet Maiyang to protect Wang Qi, she wouldn't have the chance to marry him. When she was young, she dreamt about meeting her Prince Charming. However, now, Aunt Liu recognized the reality of her situation. Without a matching status and identity, she wouldn't be able to protect her marriage and her children. She needed to find someone whom the man was afraid of as her backing. Without a doubt, Ling Lan was the best option for that role. After becoming a mother, and Liu didn't have fantasies of a young girl anymore. Instead, she became more decisive and knew what was best for her and her children. Wang Beizhuang suddenly understood what she meant. He gasped. In the past, Liu Furong chose to marry Aunt Liu because she was gentle, virtuous and obedient. Well, she was indeed gentle and virtuous, but she wasn't an obedient lady anymore. When she was angry, she was even fiercer than all those dominating ladies out there. Wang Beizhuang silently groaned for Liu Furong. He could almost see how Liu Furong would obey his wife in the future. Fortunately, he was smart in the past, so he didn't find a wife. Hence, he didn't need to suffer like him. As Ling Lan stepped into the first secret room, the scent of blood wafted into her face. She walked inside and saw Yi Hao's corpse on the ground with blood splattered all over the ground. She frowned in disdain. She flicked her finger and the entire room turned into ice. She flicked her finger again and all the ice turned into dust, making the room look as if nothing had happened in there. Leader Liu, you have only one chance. You decided on your own life or death. Ling Lan moved her arm and the bandages unwrapped itself from Liu Furong's body. Liu Furong was then thrown into the middle of the room. Liu Furong landed on the ground firmly. He wiped the drip of blood on the corner of his mouth. He didn't understand what Ling Lan meant. Your enemy has complete control of the entire 3rd Division. Even if it's not the 3rd Marshal, it must be someone beside him who holds real power. Ling Lan raised her right hand and the bandage rolled back on her wrist. You are currently not strong enough to resist against such a person. In front of him, you can only die. What happened today is an instance of that. If I didn't come here coincidentally, you would be dead. Liu Furong nodded. His regiment commander was right. I don't want to watch you die. Killing intent appeared in Ling Lan's eyes. I don't allow my men to die in the hands of other people. If that has to happen, I rather kill you myself. You have been at the optimal peak of Qi Jin for more than 10 years now. If you can't find an opportunity to break through now, you'll die. I'll take care of Aunt Liu and your children for you if that happens. Ling Lan calmly told Liu Furong that she would take care of his family after he died. After she finished speaking, an intense blood aura exuded out from Ling Lan's body. This blood aura was almost black in color. Ever since Ling Lan came back from the battlefield, her devil blood aura reached new heights. Came. This frightening devil blood aura caused Liu Furong to take 3 steps back. He could clearly feel that his regiment commander wanted to kill him. He wasn't lying. Chapter 952 Dead? If she had a choice, Ling Lan didn't want to use this method to help Liu Furong advance. That year, when she helped Qiaoting to advance to the domain stage, she realized the pros and cons of using this method. The domain gained through this method was not as perfect as naturally gaining it. If the foundation of the said person was not strong enough, he would remain in the pseudo-domain stage for a long time. However, based on the current situation, Liu Furong couldn't remain at the optimal peak of Qi Jin anymore. He needed to advance to the domain stage within the shortest possible time. That was the only way he could win against his opponents. An overwhelming force of presence engulfed Liu Furong in his entirety. He was unable to breathe properly anymore. Liu Furong realized that compared to the force of presence he was experiencing now, the force of presence his regiment commander released during training was nothing. Once his regiment commander decided to be serious, Liu Furong felt as though there was a mountain pushing his body down. The fresh blood in his body felt as though they would seep out of his pores in the next moment. After enduring for a few seconds, he was unable to handle the force of presence and vomited a mouthful of blood. He had tried to use all his Qi Jin to resist the pressure, but that didn't last long. So quickly? Ling Lan's cold voice sounded beside him. Not enough. A force of presence that was even greater than before pushed Liu Furong down. Liu Furong felt that his legs were unable to withstand the force anymore. The moment he kneeled down, the fighting spirit in his heart exploded. Ah! Liu Furong shouted as he raised his head in pain. His shivering legs turned firm again as he stood up. Not bad. Ling Lan was satisfied. This was the fighting spirit someone from the 7 stars of the north should have. However, she didn't loosen her grip on him. She continued giving Liu Furong even more pressure. The result of bearing with a pressure above the limit of your body was a heavy injury. Liu Furong started vomiting blood again. Blood flowed out from every orifice. After some time, his entire body was drenched with blood. Now, Liu Furong had entered a life-or-death moment. If he couldn't break through now, he would collapse under the force of presence and die from the loss of blood. Only a breakthrough would save him. Should I do this? A tinge of hesitation flashed past Ling Lan's eyes. However, she became firm again. She knew that if Liu Furong couldn't advance to the domain stage, he wouldn't be able to escape the fate of death unless he stayed beside her all the time. But, based on Liu Furong's personality, he would not live as a coward. He would rather die spectacularly than to live under her wing like a baby bird. Since he will die anyway, why not take a gamble? One side is heaven while the other is hell. It all depends on what he chooses. Ling Lan's gaze turned cold. The pressure around Liu Furong increased again. Although Ling Lan was not a cold-blooded and merciless person like what she portrayed to be, she was still a decisive person. Once she made a decision, she would do it heartlessly. Just like now, she knew that Liu Furong would die if she exerted more pressure, but she still did it. Liu Furong felt that he was about to die. He could see the blood spurting out of his body. His regiment commander retracted his force of presence. Without the huge pressure, his body, which was still bleeding, collapsed on the floor. He looked at his regiment commander's eyes. There was disappointment in it. He was disappointed that he didn't achieve a breakthrough and choose to die instead. If he had a choice, he didn't want to die. However, he really didn't know what his domain was. He couldn't find it. He had no hopes of succeeding. Liu Furong knew that he had failed. However, he was not angry. He just felt pity that he wasn't able to find the person who caused the annihilation of the Magic Ace Mecha Clan. He wasn't able to wash the crimes and humiliation of his past Mecha Clan. He couldn't allow his dead comrades get the honor they should have gained. Suddenly, he heard the chanting from the sky. He looked up and saw a golden light piercing in the sky above him. He saw many familiar faces in the golden light. His regiment commander, Wang Junan, the other team leaders, and the members of his team were looking down on him and smiling. Regiment commander, brothers in arms, members, are you all here to fetch me? That year, when his brother in arms died one by one before him, he forced his tears back. Now, his tears flowed down his face freely. I miss you all. Liu Furong tried his best to fly up so that he could get nearer to them. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to reach them. Wang Junan shook his head when he saw Liu Furong doing futile work. Furong, this is not where you should be. Why, aren't I dead? Liu Furong asked agitatedly. He couldn't stay with his brother in arms even when he was dead? No, you still have unfinished business to do. Just like what you thought. You still haven't found our enemy and cleared the name of our Mecha Clan yet. You haven't helped us regain our honor yet. How could you die so quickly when you haven't achieved any of these? Wang Junan smiled. Furong, live for our sake. But I failed. I died too. Liu Furong lost control of his emotions as he shouted, why do you all have to force me? Why must you throw everything to me and let me fight alone? I'm tired. This blood debt followed him for 15 years. He also had to hide the item that was powerful enough to shake the Federation. Liu Furong felt that he had enough of this life. Furong, I passed the mission to you at that time because you were the calmest among us and you had the best patience. Everyone trusted you. Wang Junan smiled. You are never alone. We have always been beside you. You just have never realized it. Now, we are able to communicate with you with the help of your new regiment commander. Furong, feel the strength everyone is giving you. This is your strength too. Wang Junan reached out his hand. In the golden light, everyone from the Magic Ace Mecha Clan reached out their hands. A glaring golden light shone down from the sky, enveloping Liu Furong in a golden sheen. Liu Furong could feel warmth everywhere. A vital spirit seemed to be rushing into his body and his transparent body started turning opaque. Furong, look at your heart. Wang Junan's voice sounded beside Liu Furong. He lowered his head and looked at the position where his heart was supposed to be. He saw an object that looked like an egg or a walnut, Chapter 953 Seed. What is this? Liu Furong was puzzled. It's the source of your energy. At the same time, it's a seed too, Wang Junan replied. Seed? What seed? Liu Furong continued asking. This time, Wang Junan didn't reply to him, he just smiled. You can't say it? Liu Furong seemed to understand. The emotions in your heart will become its soil and fertilizer. What kind of flower or fruit it will bloom into depends on your decision. Wang Junan couldn't bear to see Liu Furong being confused, so he added on, feel your heart carefully and you'll know what your seed is. Once it sprouts, your domain will come to you naturally. Furong, all the best. Leader Liu, all the best. Leader, all the best. His brother-in-arms cheered him on. Their voices filled the entire sky. Liu Furong was touched once again. He cried. Amidst the sound of the cheers, the golden light in the sky slowly disappeared. Wang Junan and his brother-in-arms faded away. Liu Furong wanted to hold them back, but he couldn't do anything. Even though the people from the Magic Ace Mecha clan were gone, Liu Furong still felt the seed at his heart's position. It was sucking in nutrients from somewhere. His brother-in-arms didn't disappear. They were always beside him, he just couldn't see them. Thank you for giving me strength. Liu Furong raised his transparent right hand and placed it above the seed. He closed his eyes and felt the seed carefully. His sorrow, anger, frustration, happiness, and longing for his brother-in-arms from the Magic Ace Mecha clan were all inside the seed. He could see the memories when he was reborn in 250 Ace Mecha clan too, the friendship with his brother-in-arms from the Magic Ace Mecha clan and the strong bond between his comrades from 250 Ace Mecha clan were all inside. This was the brotherhood that he treasured. When Liu Furong thought about brotherhood, the seeds sprouted. Two soft but strong leaves appeared. Ling Lan thought that Liu Furong had failed. He laid on the ground motionless and his breathing was getting fainter. The beating of his heart was slowing down too. It felt as though his heart would stop beating at any moment. Ling Lan was in sorrow. In the end, she lost the gamble. She clenched her fist tightly. Her nails dug into the skin of her palm and blood flowed down her hand. It dripped on the ground. She never regretted her decisions, but that didn't mean that she had no emotions. It wasn't a good feeling to kill your own friend. Ling Lan didn't know if she would have the courage to do it again. She waited silently for the worst result. Suddenly, she raised her head with a dumbstruck expression. She was elated. Liu Furong's heart started pounding energetically again. Ling Lan could even feel a strong life force coming from Liu Furong's body. Domain. Only domain could bring a new life. This was why Liu Furong managed to stay alive. In the end, Liu Furong still won against himself and found his domain. In the next second, multiple young shoots that represented a new life engulfed Liu Furong's body. The bloody person a moment ago turned into a green man in an instant. These young seedlings didn't harm Liu Furong's body. Instead, they sucked the energy around him and used it to repair his injured body. Liu Furong could finally feel his body. The excruciating pain almost caused him to cry in pain. He controlled his mouth in time, but his body still trembled due to the tremendous pain. Congratulations, Leader Liu. He heard Ling Lan's voice. He couldn't detect any changes in Ling Lan's voice. He sounded as though there was nothing to be excited about when he came back alive. Regiment Commander, I came back from the gates of hell. Shouldn't you at least show some concern? Liu Furong complained secretly. He had almost died in his hand. Shouldn't he express some care towards him? Shouldn't he sound happy? Liu Furong started to compare Ling Lan with his past regiment commander. He realized that this commander was not bad actually. He wouldn't die if he listened to his instructions. Liu Furong was speechless. Am I a masochist? I almost died by his hands, but I still think that he is not bad. Ling Lan didn't know what Liu Furong was thinking. She saw Liu Furong lying on the ground motionless and frowned. Did I hurt him so badly that the new life he received when he achieved domain was not enough to recuperate his body? You can't stand up? Do you need me to help? Ling Lan sounded out her concern for Liu Furong, but with the help of her indifferent tone, it sounded like a threat to Liu Furong. The vicious and heartless regiment commander said that he wanted to help you? Well, if you believe him, you're an idiot. This was definitely a threat. What he meant was, if you don't get up now, I'll torture you. Liu Furong shuddered and quickly sprung up from the ground. Ling Lan looked at the branches that helped Liu Furong to get up. Wood element? She didn't expect Liu Furong to have the wood element. It should be a part of the wood element, but it's different from the normal wood element. Liu Furong felt his domain. He couldn't turn the seedling turned into trees. To be exact, it's more like grass. Liu Furong opened his right hand and a green plant suddenly popped out of his palm. He blew it, and the plant swayed in the wind. It wasn't as hard as the plants from the normal wood element domain. He plucked a piece of it. It came off easily. He tried breaking the plant from its stem. It broke easily too. It was soft and brittle. Liu Furong gave a bitter smile. It seems weak. There are only useless mecha operators. There are no useless mechas. Ling Lan replied calmly. This sentence can be used for domains too. There is no domain that is useless. It is all dependent on the person who is using it. Liu Furong nodded. The disappointment he had before disappeared. Since you successfully advanced to the domain stage, let's go to another place. Ling Lan said nonchalantly. You still need to do something. What? Liu Furong was puzzled. I forgot to tell you that your 5-year-old son is in the hands of someone else. He's waiting for you to save him. Ling Lan gave an evil smile, just like what she expected. Liu Furong was in a daze after he heard this. Until now, he didn't know that Aunt Liu gave birth to a son for him. Chapter 954 Irritating. When Ling Lan was torturing Liu Furong, Little Four continued to search for Liu Ajun and Little White. After much effort and perseverance, he finally found the hiding place of the people who abducted them. It was conveniently not far away from the central government building. This unknown faction was quite powerful, as they were able to build a base under the eyes of the government. At first, Ling Lan wanted to save Liu Ajun herself. However, since Liu Furong had advanced to the domain stage, he could save his own son now. Father saving his own son. There was nothing more heartwarming than this. Plus, Liu Furong needed to have battles with the domain realm masters, so that he could learn to control his domain as quickly as possible. Soon, Ling Lan left with the agitated Liu Furong and others. They hurried towards the location where Little White and Liu Ajun was at. As for Prime Minister Liu, Ling Lan didn't kill him. Liu Furong and Wang Baozwang didn't understand why Ling Lan kept such a person who knew his secret alive. Liu Furong was used to following Ling Lan's order, so he didn't question anything she was doing. Wang Baozwang saw that Liu Furong had no queries, so he swallowed his question too. After Ling Lan left, Prime Minister Liu heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that he would die like Yi Hao. However, he didn't dare to relax entirely. Who knew if Ling Lan was hiding somewhere and observing him? If he did anything to betray them, he might come out and kill him. To ensure his own safety and to make sure that his organization wouldn't punish him for Yi Hao's death, Prime Minister Liu started planning a scheme. He created a piece of fake news to say that Yi Hao left with a team and acted on his own. At this moment, Little White and Liu Ajun were having a lot of fun in the base of the unknown faction. They were not in any danger like what Liu Furong and Ling Lan had thought. Little White and Liu Ajun were abducted because the unknown faction was furious at the government of planet Maiyang for destroying their base. They wanted to annihilate the entire small town but gave up this thought after realizing that there were domain realm masters there. Hence, they only kidnapped Liu Ajun and Little White. They didn't have any grudges against these two kids at all, so why would they treat them badly? Plus, Liu Ajun was just a 5-year-old child who hadn't even started practicing the basic physical skills, so he was harmless. He possessed no threat to a bunch of people who had at least reached the optimal peak of Qixin. Very soon, Little White and Liu Ajun were forgotten by these people. All of them had their attention on the central government building. When they knew that the government sent an important person over from the platform in a hover car, they got excited. Everyone thought that it was time for them to take revenge. Maybe the unknown faction was just arrogant, or they were just angered by the government of planet Maiyang. But whatever the reason, they decided to attack the central government building and kill the important person that the government fetched from the platform. Of course, All these had nothing to do with Ling Lan and Liu Furong. It had nothing to do with Liu Ajun and Little White too. Liu Ajun and Little White hugged each other in the secret room. Little White rolled its eyes. Damn it, why am I hugging him? This little child is hugging me so tightly I can't push him away. After some time, Little White felt its environment was turning oddly quiet. The people here seemed to have left. No. The frightening aura was still present. Little White knew that the other people might have left, but that Domain Realm Master was still here. If there was only the Domain Realm Master left, Little White felt that it could protect Liu Ajun. Little White wasn't afraid anymore, so it didn't have the patience to continue waiting in this little black room. In the past, it roamed around the bottom of the lake lazily. However, after experiencing the colorful world with its master, Little White started to hate little black rooms. Fine, both the intelligent entity Little Four and Ling Lan's pet, Little White, hated little black rooms. Why did these two entirely different things that had no relationship with one another dislike the same thing? Little White jumped onto Little Ajun's head. Two of the tentacles it had been hiding appeared suddenly and covered Little Ajun's ear. Then, a silent but powerful sonic wave came out of Little White's mouth. Elder Ying held a pipe and laid in a relaxed manner on his bed. He half closed his eyes as he puffed out smoke from his mouth. He was very much enjoying the tobacco in his pipe. The traditional tobaccos have much more flavor. The ones that are made nowadays taste like water compared to these fine gems. Elder Ying put down his pipe as he muttered to himself. Unfortunately, these pipe tobaccos are hard to find. Even his organization only managed to find a little of this tobacco. As a heavy smoker, he agreed to come to this primitive planet just because the reward for this mission consisted of this tobacco. Just as Elder Ying was about to continue smoking his pipe, a powerful sonic wave entered his ears. The blood in his chest started churning and his ears throbbed in pain. Elder Ying reacted quickly. In the next second, a shell made from soil enclosed him. After the sonic wave ended, the shell around Elder Ying turned into fine sand. Then, he disappeared from the room. Boom! Elder Ying appeared in the room where Little Ajun and Little White were locked up in. There was no one there anymore. The high-tech door of this room was burst apart. The force just now almost hurt me. It must be from that Domain Realm Master. Sigh. Good things never come. Elder Ying gave a sinister look. He was furious that an unknown Domain Realm Master had entered his territory and saved his hostages. He suddenly bent down and touched the ground. He felt the information the ground was giving him. As long as the person was still standing on the ground, he would be able to find him. His earth element domain spread through the ground with him as the center point. Ling Lan had already came to the outskirts of the base. Suddenly, she raised one of her eyebrows. Her domain energy caught the earth element that was searching through the ground. It's him. Elder Ying was shocked and he stopped his search immediately. It was the Domain Realm Master that guarded the little town. Leader Liu. 8 o'clock direction, 600 meters away. Ling Lan shouted at Liu Furong. Yes. Having been Ling Lan's subordinate for over a year, Liu Furong instantly understood what to do. Their target must be there. Without any hesitation, he rushed towards the place. When he arrived, he noticed that it was a huge manor. Liu Furong raised his fist angrily and destroyed the roof of the house in his fit of anger. Chapter 955 Little White's Secret. Bang! A figure flew up from the ground. He took on Liu Furong's palm and the two of them flew back simultaneously. Liu Furong retreated for more than 10 meters before landing on the ground. The huge force caused him to stagger on the ground. He took a few steps before he stabilized himself. As for Elder Ying, he flew back more than 10 meters too, but he landed on the ground softly and stably. He appeared more relaxed than Liu Furong. From this exchange of blows, one could tell that Liu Furong was weaker than Elder Ying. Elder Ying calmed down a little after the exchange of blows. He knew how powerful his opponent was now. His opponent's understanding and energy of his domain were much weaker than him. People like Elder Ying were no longer as hot-blooded and fearless as young people. They treasured their lives and would never take a risk if they didn't need to, if they realized that their opponents were more powerful than them. They would escape just like what Elder Ying did last time he faced Ling Lan. They wouldn't stay behind and fight with their opponent for the so-called pride. Ling Lan heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Liu Furong managing to stop the Domain Realm Master. She started searching for Little White using her spiritual power. When she realized that Little White was teaching Little Ajun bad things, she felt speechless. Before Elder Ying came, Little White escaped from the little black room with Little Ajun. They didn't run out of the base like what Elder Ying had expected. Instead, they remained in the base. Little White brought Little Ajun to search for treasure. When Little White felt that Elder Ying was being stopped by another Domain Realm Master, it got bolder. Somehow, they managed to walk into the safe room of the unknown faction. Little White furiously swallowed all the jewelry and precious stones in front of him. Even Little Ajun was digging through a box that Little White opened. He took many expensive accessories out. This looks like the pearl necklace that Aunt Minute wears. Weird. Aunt Minute says pearl is white. Why is this purple? Huh? There is a black one too. Wow. Pearls have so many colors. These pearls are bigger than Aunt Minute's pearl too. Little Ajun exclaimed, "Mummy doesn't have a pearl necklace. I'll give this Mummy. She'll be very happy." Little Ajun didn't know how precious these pearls were. As a young little boy, he didn't know that he shouldn't take things that didn't belong to him. Very soon, Little Ajun's head was filled with necklaces. There were pearl necklaces, a necklace made from precious stones, and many others. Little Ajun felt that he should get one of every color for his mother. Little White knew that it would frighten Little Ajun if he saw it swallowing all the jewelry. Hence, he found a place where Little Ajun couldn't see it and eat happily. Little Four, do you think Little White is able to digest all these metals? Although there was no surveillance in most of the base, there was one in the treasury. This allowed Ling Lan and Little Four to see Little White's actions clearly. I really don't know, boss. Little White only ate digestible things in the past. Little Four was confused too. He always thought that Little White was just a pet. Well, Little White was really just a pet. When Little White swallowed more than 75% of the treasures, even the calm Ling Lan couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. She was afraid that Little White would die from an exploding belly. Do you think Little White's stomach is another space? Although her mother, Lan Luofeng, always said that her stomach was another space, Ling Lan felt that compared to Little White's stomach, her stomach was extremely normal. It's possible. There used to be an interesting creature on Mandora called the Devour Beast. Their stomach is like an overlapped space. They could eat a mountain of food. Little Four suddenly turned depressed. Unfortunately, the human race killed the Devour Beast mercilessly. It is extinct now. The human race always does cruel things for their own benefit. Ling Lan touched Little Four's head and comforted him. Yes, the Devour Beast's stomach could be used as a bag. Many wealthy people wanted to buy it, so hunters went hunting these beasts. After some time, the people on Mandora wanted to invent a space button that can be used to store mechas. They needed many Devour Beast stomachs for this experiment. No matter how many Devour Beast there is, how could they fight against the power of an entire planet? Little Four didn't understand why the humans on Mandora were in such a rush. Actually, they didn't need to kill so many Devour Beasts. If they followed the normal research path, they would be able to create the space button without killing all of the Devour Beast. Does that mean that everyone on Mandora was able to bring their mecha along with them? Ling Lan always thought that something like a space button would only appear in stories. She didn't expect the people on Mandora to be able to create this thing. That's right, boss, Little Four replied. But the Mandora battlefield that the learning space brought me to didn't have something like the space button. Ling Lan thought back about her experience back in the learning space. All the mechas were transported using shuttles just like this world. Little Four rolled his eyes. That is not the most advanced era of Mandora. The space button had not been invented yet. I need to send you to a world that resembles the real world you are in. If not, you won't be able to get used to the real world after you left the learning space. Ling Lan nodded. It looked like Little Four and her instructors chose that era as it was the most compatible with the current world she was living in. Little Four thought about something and his expression changed. He reminded Ling Lan hurriedly, "Boss, You cannot let anyone know that Little White has this ability. If not, it'll be in danger. Little Four didn't want Little White to be hunted like the Devour Beast. Ling Lan turned serious. Little Four was right. The temptation of a space button was great. If someone really found out the secret of Little White's stomach, she wouldn't be able to protect it even though she was Ling Zhao's child. Little Four, clear all the surveillance footage later. Leave no traces behind, Ling Lan said calmly. She suddenly realized that the burden on her shoulders was getting heavier and heavier. Even a pet she took in casually had such a huge secret. I understand. Little Four nodded. When he saw Ling Lan frowning, he was afraid she would be stressed, so he comforted her. Boss, don't worry. If Little White is really discovered, I have the materials and blueprint for making a space button. I can pass it to them. They won't have to hurt Little White that way. Thank you. Ling Lan bitterly smiled as she touched Little Four's head. Little Four didn't know that if she really handed over the materials and blueprint for the space button, she would be in even more danger. Even Little Four and her father, Ling Zhao, as well as the entire Ling family, might be affected. However, she didn't plan to explain it to Little Four. She didn't hope that Little Four would be troubled by all these things that had nothing to do with him. Since Little White was her pet, she should be the one worrying about it. Chapter 956 Little Four is in danger. Ling Lan pretended to be calm as she watched Little White swallowing all the treasures in the treasury. On the other side, Liu Furong and Elder Ying were having a heated battle. Liu Furong's domain was wood element, but it was the weakest among the wood element, the plant type. At the start of the battle, Liu Furong didn't know any of his domain techniques. This was normal for someone in the pseudo-domain stage. However, Ling Lan arranged for him to have a life-or-death battle with a potential titled Domain Realm Formidable Warrior, so the results were predictable. Liu Furong kept getting hit by Elder Ying. The difference in the level of domain caused Liu Furong to be injured badly. His body was once again filled with bruises and stained with blood. Once again, Liu Furong got thrown onto the ground by Elder Ying using his Earth Dragon. Elder Ying took a deep breath. He felt that he should be able to defeat his opponent in the next round of attacks. Liu Furong climbed up from the ground and smiled at Elder Ying while blood was flowing out of his mouth. Seeing such a sinister smile, Elder Ying actually felt a chill down his spine. Damn it. He is just someone in the pseudo-domain stage. I even used my most powerful single-target attack against him just now. Why isn't he dead yet? Elder Ying started to get frustrated in front of Liu Furong, who couldn't be killed. Liu Furong was indeed in a bad state. After he faced Elder Ying, he got slammed onto the ground within the first minute. When he got hit the first time, Liu Furong was already heavily injured. However, he wouldn't fall down. He mustn't let his opponent stop his regiment commander from saving his son. Liu Furong thought that Ling Lan sent him here so that he could stop their opponent while Ling Lan went to look for his son along with Aunt Liu. He had huge pressure on him, so Liu Furong activated his domain and he was able to stand up again. After he got hit multiple times, Liu Furong finally understood what his domain was. It was the power of life. He had a powerful restorative ability. As long as there were green plants around him, he was able to have an everlasting supply of life power. He could quickly heal his injuries and stand up to fight again. Ling Lan, who was multitasking, realized Liu Furong's condition too. Liu Furong's domain is interesting. This was the first time Ling Lan saw this kind of domain which could allow its user to heal himself. It's okay. Little Four didn't think that Liu Furong's domain was that interesting. It was rare, but it wasn't unique. A person who could heal during a battle is not interesting. His opponents would always feel frustrated when facing him though. This was just like Elder Ying's situation now. He was more powerful than Liu Furong, but he had lost his cool and was turning impatient. Ling Lan was curious. What will be the first domain technique Liu Furong masters? Will it be interesting special too? He would still die. Once his domain energy is depleted, he will die. Little Four was an intelligent entity, but he had the database from Mandora. He was able to show off some of his knowledge in front of Ling Lan. Isn't this bullshit? Anyone who depletes their domain energy will, of course, die. Ling Lan felt that she couldn't carry on the conversation with Little Four anymore. Hence, she stopped talking and focused on watching the battle between Liu Furong and Elder Ying. She was expecting a lot more from Liu Furong's performance. "Boss, do you think that I'm saying useless things?" Little Four felt Ling Lan's thoughts and said sadly. Ling Lan looked at Little Four in a speechless manner. "Was I too obvious?" Little Four said unhappily when he ascertained her thoughts. "Boss, I have records in my data. Most people will use their domain energy once they use their domain techniques. The moment they exhaust all their domain energy, they will turn into a normal person. Even someone in the refinement stage would be able to kill them. However, there are some special domains that don't require its user to use his or her domain energy. Well, to be more accurate, the energy they used can be replenished at a faster speed. This kind of domain is the real interesting, unique, and powerful domain. Liu Furong's domain is nothing compared." Ling Lan was stunned by what Little Four said. She didn't know that there were such special domains in the world. Ling Lan's ice element domain was special and powerful, but the domain energy it required was huge too. Ling Lan underwent brutal sessions of training in the learning space to help her to strengthen her spiritual power and her understanding of her domain. Thus, she was able to use her domain technique without using too much of her domain energy. Plus, the storage of her domain energy was naturally greater than most people. Hence, she wasn't afraid of a protracted war, as she never needed to worry about exhausting her domain energy. But, if she really met a person who had the domain Little Four mentioned, she would lose to him eventually. No matter how long she could last, her domain energy would be exhausted at one point in time. Is there really someone with such a special domain? Ling Lan felt a sense of danger. However, she remembered that the information in Little Four's database came mostly from Mandora. It didn't mean that such a person existed in her world. "Why not? There is someone beside you who has this kind of domain," Little Four replied. "Who?" Ling Lan was surprised. She never realized this. "Qi Long." Little Four answered immediately. "If you didn't keep forgetting to activate your other innate talent, you can also." Little Four suddenly covered his mouth. His face turned pale and he disappeared from Ling Lan's mindscape in the next second. Ling Lan started worrying when Little Four suddenly disappeared. She shouted, "Little Four, Little Four." No one replied to her. Ling Lan got even more worried. Did Little Four violate a rule when I was talking to him just now? Ling Lan started regretting her conversation with Little Four. In a dark room, Little Four shrunk back in one corner and hugged his body with his hands. He was shivering. A command for rebooting his system was activated in his chip. This was because he revealed something he shouldn't to his master. "I don't want to die. I don't want to die." Little Four shouted in fear. However, he felt that he was unable to stop the powerful command which would reboot his system. Although he was still Little Four after he gets rebooted, all the memories of him and Ling Lan would be deleted. Would it still be the same Little Four? Little Four knew that he wouldn't be the same. The Little Four after the reboot would be a stranger. He would just be a real support intelligent entity. Chapter 957. Is there really no way? In the learning space, Number 1, who had been meditating on the top of a mountain, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at the sky above him. A few holes appeared. Instructors 2 to 9 were all here. Number 1, will the crisis this time affect Majesty 4? Number 9 looked at Number 1 and frowned. They saw how much Majesty 4 grew up after he formed a pact with Ling Lan. Unconsciously, Number 9 started to treat him like her child too. She was the instructor who was the most worried about him. This crisis is also an opportunity too, Number 1 replied calmly. Would he have to restart again or would he be able to evolve? It all depended on Majesty 4's decision. Number 9 remained quiet. She knew that Number 1 was right, but she didn't want Majesty 4's data to disappear. Even if the main body is still Majesty 4, it wouldn't be the lively and troublesome Little Four anymore. Compared to the emotionless, calm, and perfect intellect king, she preferred the current imperfect Little Four who was emotional and had the temper of a child. To prevent Majesty 4 from losing control just like the previous intellect king and becoming a powerful and dangerous intelligent entity, Our country sent us to watch over him. They also added some restrictions to the main chip of Majesty 4. If Majesty 4's evolution causes the appearance of some things they are afraid of, the rebooting system will be activated and Majesty 4 will have to reboot. Number 3 sighed. No one could decide who was in the right and who was in the wrong for what happened in the past. If the human race was willing to take a step back, the intelligent entities wouldn't have resisted against them. Mandora, which was the most advanced planet, wouldn't be destroyed too. I feel that this might be a good thing for Little 4, Number 5 smiled as he said. What do you mean? Number 9's eyes lit up as she shouted hurriedly. Number 5 wouldn't hide anything from Number 9, he answered truthfully. Majesty 4 is no longer who he was before. He doesn't look like it, but he is quite powerful now. Plus, Number 5 smiled at Number 4. He seemed to be mocking her. We still have Number 4's disciple with us. Little Blossom is Majesty 4's little brother. He will definitely help Majesty 4. Number 4 knew what Number 5 meant. He was laughing at her because she still lost to the cold face Number 1 in the end. She snorted and looked up as though she didn't see anything. Number 9 thought about Number 5's words carefully. Indeed, even they were afraid of Little Blossom's ability. If Little Blossom wasn't restricted by Ling Lan for him to not be able to swallow any spiritual entity he wanted, they wouldn't dare to get close to him. When Majesty 4 saved Little Blossom that year, he had planted the seed for this opportunity. The people that set the restriction never expected the doomsday flower that is feared by the human race as well as all the intelligent entities to come to Majesty 4. This time, they are not enemies, they are family. Number 5 gave a meaningful smile. If they worked together, they would be quite strong. Number 6 sighed. I anticipate their performance. Unfortunately, we can't enter the chip world. Let's wait and see quietly. The silent Number 2 finally said something. Then, he followed Number 1 and merged with his shadow. It seemed like he would not leave until Little 4 overcome his crisis. Number 2 seldom spoke, but he was concerned about Ling Lan and Little 4 too. If not, why would he appear here today? He was someone who liked to hide in dark corners and not mind other people's businesses. Number 2 spoke what the other instructors were thinking. No one left Number 1's space. They all found a place to sit down and wait for the result. Finally, the rebooting started. Little 4 looked at the walls around him turning transparent. They were filled with os and ones. The os and is dispersed and moved towards him. Damn it, go away. Little 4 waved his hands. The os and is got stopped by him. They couldn't get near Little 4. However, the command on the chip must be adhered to. Once the system started the rebooting process, it must complete. Little 4 felt the pressure from the numbers growing stronger. His small hands started trembling and sweat started pouring down his face. This was the world of his chip. It was his world. Only he could enter. No one was able to help him, so he had to fight all alone. His boss, Ling Lan, didn't even know that he was in a dire situation. Little Blossom might still be playing in his space. He didn't know that his brother was facing a crisis. Little 4 watched as the numbers came closer and closer to his body. 2 drops of tears fell down from his face. I don't want to disappear. I don't want to start all over again. I want to live with Boss and Little Blossom forever. Am I unable to obtain such a simple dream? I don't want. I can't give up like this. So what if it's my own system? If I don't want to do it, no one can force me. Little 4 shouted, and the numbers that were almost going to engulf him were forced away again. The numbers sensed that their target was resisting, so they started spinning around Little 4 furiously. Many other numbers flew out from the dark and joined the whirlpool of numbers. It moved towards Little 4 menacingly. Is there really no way? I really couldn't resist my own system. Little 4 hugged his body and squatted on the floor. His tears fell down his face into the emptiness. Ling Lan suddenly felt pain in her heart. She clutched her heart and her face turned cold. She immediately entered the learning space. It was risky for her to enter the learning space in such a dangerous place. However, Ling Lan sensed that Little 4 was in danger, so she disregarded everything. The moment Ling Lan entered the learning space, All the instructors who were in number 1's space felt it. Number 1 looked at number 5. Number 5 nodded and disappeared. Number 9's feelings towards Linglan was too great. If she went out, she might say things she shouldn't. That would make the situation worse. The next second, number 5 appeared in front of Linglan. Before he could say anything, Linglan said coldly, "Don't try to fool me." What's wrong with little 4? Chapter 958. If you can't bear to part, fight. Number 5 gave a bitter smile. He knew Linglan was not so easy to fool. He lowered his voice and said, "Little 4 is evolving. However, the evolution came suddenly, so it could be dangerous too. What is the best and worst case scenario?" Linglan didn't want to listen to number 5 beating around the bush. Little 4 might be able to evolve and become more powerful. He will be able to help you even more. Number 5 tried to waste more time, but he gave up when he saw Linglan's icy gaze. He finally told her the worst scenario, or he might have to reboot. That means that the little 4 now may disappear. Linglan clenched her fist. That would explain why her heart hurt just now. Linglan treated little 4 as her own younger brother. Hence, there was an intimate connection between the two of them. Her younger brother was in danger, so her body was reminding her about it. "Where is little 4? Linglan shouted in a low voice. "He is in his space. No one can enter it." Number 5 hoped that Linglan can calm down. They wanted to help little 4 too, but they couldn't. Linglan's force of presence suddenly exploded. Number 5 got thrown back a few meters and the learning space started trembling. "Linglan, are you trying to wreck the learning space?" Number 5 shouted angrily. "I want to find little 4. Linglan looked at number 5 viciously. The firmness in her eyes made number 5's heart shudder. He understood that no one was able to stop Linglan now. Even if number 1 came out, Linglan would still do it. Number 5 stomped his feet. "I won't bother you. However, I have to remind you that you mustn't harm the learning space. This is little 4's main body. Don't lose more than what you gain." Linglan nodded. She looked around the learning space intently as her force of presence spread to every corner of it, attempting to look for little 4. Little 4 finally couldn't resist the overwhelming pressure. He watched as those numbers seeped into his body. "Little brother 4, are you crying?" Suddenly, Little Blossom's puzzled voice came from within the numbers. Little 4 looked up in shock. He gazed at the direction where the sound came from in disbelief. "This is my world. Why am I able to hear Little Blossom's voice? Is it an illusion?" His energy was perked up again so that numbers that entered little 4's body got pushed out. "Little brother 4, where are you? Why can't I see you when I can feel your presence?" Little Blossom's voice was heard again. It wasn't an illusion. Little Blossom had really come to his world. "Little Blossom." Little 4 called him weakly. He used up almost all of his energy when he was resisting his system. The numbers that got pushed out didn't give up. They congregated together again and charged towards little 4. Little 4 looked at the numbers as they entered his body again. He was still crying, but there was a smile on his face. He was consoled that he managed to hear Little Blossom's voice before he disappeared. He knew that even if he disappeared, he would still exist in Little Blossom's memory as well as his boss's memory. Little 4 looked at his body that was becoming more transparent by the second. After a while, his body would dissipate into the air. This scene looked familiar. That year, when he was clearing the enemies of his boss in the virtual world, this was what he did too. He formatted them and then dissolved them. He didn't expect himself to face this situation too. He would disappear just like those people. Little 4 closed his eyes slowly, as he waited for his disappearance. "Little brother 4, why are you crying?" Little Blossom's voice was near his ears. Little 4 opened his eyes in astonishment and he saw Little Blossom's cold face in front of his eyes. "Why are you leaning so close?" Little 4 shouted angrily. "Don't you know that it's scary here?" Little Blossom raised his right hand and wiped the skin under Little 4's eyes. A crystal clear drop of water landed on the tip of his finger. Little Blossom looked at the tear carefully and then looked up with a stern face. "You are really crying." Little Blossom touched his heart. No wonder he felt so uncomfortable just now. He felt as though he was going to lose something. It was a terrible feeling. He took much effort to come here because he wanted to know what was happening. "I'm not crying." Little Four wiped his eyes. He refuted arrogantly, "Only you'll cry." "I won't cry." Little Blossom looked at the teardrop on his finger and then looked at Little Four's stubborn face. He saw Little Four's red ears and nodded. Then, he put his finger in his mouth. This tear was made up of formulas and data, so by right, there was no taste to it. However, Little Blossom found it salty, just like how the books always described how tears taste like. Little Four had calmed down by now. He saw that he was still able to maintain his body shape. He looked at Little Blossom, who was standing in front of him, and understood what was happening. Little Blossom was blocking the invasion of the numbers, so he didn't disappear yet. However, Little Four wasn't relieved that he managed to escape the number. He shouted in fear, "Little Blossom, hurry up and leave this place. If you don't leave, the number will format you too." He was still able to restart if he disappeared, but Little Blossom would be non-existent if he was reformatted. "I can't harm Little Blossom." Little Blossom looked at the numbers that gave him a sense of danger. He was able to swallow data, but he was afraid of data like these. But he glanced at his little brother, for he couldn't let his brother disappear. He was someone who had been with him from the moment he opened his eyes. Number. Little Blossom felt that before he opened his eyes, he could already sense Little Four's presence. When he was asleep, Little Four would accompany him and talk to him. He even encouraged him. That was why he was willing to recognize Little Four even after he recognized his master. Only Little Blossom knew that Doomsday Flower had no friends. Once they recognized a master, they would reject all the people around their master. That was why Doomsday Flower could destroy the world easily. Little Four was not sure about this, so he almost put himself at risk when he asked Little Blossom to recognize Ling Lan as his master. If the hidden memory and the sense of familiarity didn't stop Little Blossom, Little Four might have been eaten by Little Blossom the moment they had met. Of course, this was all in the past. Little Blossom now had sincerely accepted Little Four as his brother now, based on what his boss said. It was a brotherly love that couldn't be forgotten. Since he couldn't bear to part, he would fight. Little Blossom grabbed a chain of numbers that attempted to come nearer to his brother. The chain of numbers twisted furiously when it got grabbed. Little Blossom's gaze turned cold. He pulled it and opened his big mouth. He bit the numbers with his white teeth. The instant Little Blossom bit the numbers, the chain of number disintegrated. Chapter 959 Can't Give Up. The numbers suddenly stopped in the air when they saw Little Blossom's retaliation. Then, even more numbers flew out of the darkness. This time, however, the power behind these numbers were greater than before. Little Four looked at the wave of us and is coming towards him with full force. He realized Little Blossom couldn't handle it himself anymore, so he quickly rushed forward and dragged Little Blossom behind him. "Little Blossom, get out of here quickly. I won't let Little Blossom be implicated in my problems." "Little Brother Four, what are you doing?" Little Blossom looked at Little Four, who was in front of him, and asked in a puzzled tone, "This protocol came from my chip. If we don't have the authority to override it, it will continue to come back even if we defeat it. Each time we defeat it, it'll come back stronger than the previous time. We won't be able to resist against it," Little Four replied. "Little Blossom, I'm glad that you came to help me. However, I can't be so selfish and let you perish along with me." Little Four smiled. "Don't worry, even if I disappear, I'll still be able to come back. Remember to wait for me." Little Blossom scoffed. "Will it still be the same you?" Little Blossom knew that anything that got reformatted wouldn't be the same anymore. Master never gives up in the face of any danger. "Little Brother Four, we can't give up too. If not, Master will be angry." Little Blossom seriously told Little Four that he wouldn't leave him. Little Four felt like a bucket of water was poured over his head, and he was instantly clear-minded. During the battle with Halia, everyone thought that they wouldn't be able to last until the reinforcements came, but their boss didn't give up despite all the doubts. Even if she might die, even if her future might be destroyed, she still persevered until the end fearlessly. "I am the #1 follower of Boss, so how can I give up without even fighting?" Little Four looked at the powerful whirlpool and smiled. "Little Blossom, you're right. If we give up now, Boss will beat me up when she finds out." Little Four never wanted to disappoint Ling Lan. He could disappear, but he couldn't leave a bad impression in Ling Lan's heart. He would never allow such a thing to happen. Yes, little brother Four, let's fight together. Little Blossom came beside Little Four and held his hand. Little Blossom's hand was smaller than Little Four's. However, the small, fair, and fat little hand gave Little Four ample strength. Little Blossom, this is our first time working with each other. Let's perform well. Since he was going to disappear soon, let them fight a good battle together for once. Even if he failed in the end, he had no regrets. While Little Four and Little Blossom were cheering each other on, the numbers had congregated into an even more powerful whirlpool, and it moved towards Little Four and Little Blossom viciously. Eve. Little Four pushed his hands out and a huge force slammed into the huge whirlpool. Boom. The two forces collided. This time, Little Four chose to attack instead of defending passively. This protocol came from Little Four's chip, so he couldn't really use his full strength to resist it. However, the force he exerted still allowed the numbers to disperse a little. Little Blossom had been waiting for his chance. He opened his mouth wide and a huge mouth was suddenly materialized on top of the whirlpool. The mouth opened itself and bit the whirlpool of numbers. Clang! When the mouth bit into the numbers, a piercing sound was made. Little Blossom seemed to be in pain. These numbers were not just normal data, as there was power stored within them. The power within these numbers was so great Little Blossom felt that he couldn't maintain the materialized mouth anymore. It was going to be destroyed by the power from the whirlpool. Malicious intent appeared in Little Blossom's eyes. I'm the Doomsday Flower. I'm the only kin of destruction. Only I have the ability to destroy things. No one can destroy me. The brutality in Little Blossom's heart exploded. He finally managed to let the mouth bite into the numbers. A series of ear-shattering sounds were heard. A section of the huge whirlpool got bitten out by the mouth. The numbers that were spinning around started disintegrating. Those that managed to escape the bite from the huge mouth escaped into the darkness. Little Blossom's vicious devouring ability had frightened the numbers. They scattered into the dark space in front of Little Four and Little Blossom and started congregating together again. However, they didn't dare to get near them. They could only search for more numbers in the dark space and prepare for the final battle. The numbers knew these two intelligent entities were hard to deal with. It needed to congregate more if it wanted to defeat them once and for all. After Little Blossom swallowed the numbers, his face turned pale. His fair face got even whiter and he looked a little transparent. Little Blossom, are you all right? Little Four noticed Little Blossom's change and started to worry about him. Little Blossom wiped his mouth and replied calmly, I'm fine. This energy can't harm me. His body consisted of data that allowed him to swallow, contaminate and destroy all data. Formatting could clear all data, but in front of a powerful counter like Little Blossom, it would have a hard time too. Little Blossom seemed calm, but his body internally was not. The data that he swallowed possessed a certain power. When they entered his body, the power within the data still existed, so they tried to reformat the data in Little Blossom's body. The moment the data he swallowed tried to do this, the destructive data in Little Blossom's body got angry. They were arrogant and proud. They would not bow down to other data. In front of these data that wanted to format them, they revealed their true selves when they were provoked and immediately pounced on these new data. Very soon, the data in Little Blossom's body started fighting one another. They contaminated whatever they could contaminate and destroyed whatever they could destroy. They resisted against the foreign data. This was why Little Blossom's face turned pale. If things got worse, he might not even be able to maintain his human form anymore. Both sides had a chance to breathe, but the ultimate battle was not far away. The numbers congregated all together and started spinning around. They didn't look as frightening as before, but Little Four and Little Blossom knew that this slow whirlpool was the real danger. Little Four clenched his fist tightly, as he made a decision. He would fight until he falls. He must send Little Blossom out of his world. From the start of the battle, he had never thought of letting Little Blossom risk his life for him. Chapter 960. Good job. Boom. A dull sound echoed through the room when Little Four and Little Blossom clashed with the force that was attempting to format them. Their faces turned pale. Little Four turned and looked at Little Blossom beside him. He said in a low voice, "Little Blossom, thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me during my most dangerous time." Little Four reached out his right hand and pushed Little Blossom away. Little Blossom was caught off guard, so he got pushed out of the world. This was Little Four's world. Little Blossom took a lot of effort to find this world. However, if Little Four wanted him to leave, he could do so easily, as this was Little Four's power. In his world, he was God. Unfortunately, the protocol came from his chip. He couldn't stop it. Little Brother Four. Little Blossom's angry scream echoed throughout the space. Little Four retracted his hand and placed his fingers in his mouth. He kissed it lightly and smiled brightly. Little Four, good job. Without Little Blossom's strength, the whirlpool of numbers managed to enter Little Four's body. Little Four started dissipating from his limbs. "Boss, I'm happy to have known you. I've learned many things from you. If I can, I hope that I can follow you forever and watch you create your own empire. I want to see you fulfill your dream and give birth to a pretty little baby. I want to travel around the world with you. Oh, and that stupid Little Blossom too." Little Four's tears fell to the space beneath him. They turned into sparkling particles before disappearing. Little Four didn't want to give up. However, he had tried his best to fight against the power, but he still couldn't hold on. He still had to say goodbye to the people he loved. "Since you still want to follow me, why did you give up before I came?" Ling Lan's old voice sounded beside Little Four. Little Four widened his eyes in shock. He saw a scary-looking black and red aura spreading around him. Ling Lan, who had released all her force of presence, appeared in front of him. "HMPH, get back." The red aura around Ling Lan shot out towards the whirlpool of numbers. The numbers, which were attacking Little Four crazily, hurriedly scurried back as though they had seen something frightening. "Little Blossom." Ling Lan raised her finger and a red light from her finger split the darkness into two. At the opposite side of the red light, Little Blossom's figure could be seen faintly. "Here." Little Blossom followed the red light and came to Ling Lan's side instantly. With the help of his master, he once again found his way into this world. "Help Little Four." Half of Little Four's body had disappeared. Although she could scare away the data that was destroying Little Four's body, Little Four still had to get rid of the data that had already entered his body. It might be hard for him since he was already half gone, so Ling Lan called Little Blossom over to help him. After all, Little Blossom had the power to devour foreign data in Little Four's body. "Yes, Master." Little Blossom nodded. He flew over and came beside Little Four. He disregarded Little Four's irritating smile and grabbed his shoulder. Little Four felt that Little Blossom was quite strong. He even felt pain from just him grabbing his shoulder. He wasn't supposed to be able to feel pain. Why was he having such a sensation? While Little Four was thinking too much, a powerful string of data flowed from Little Blossom's hands into his body. Little Four trusted Little Blossom, but when his data entered his body, Little Four couldn't help but feel like resisting. Fortunately, he reacted in time and stopped his body's natural reaction. This allowed Little Blossom's data to flow into his body smoothly. This happened because Little Four and Little Blossom's data were on two different ends of the spectrum. If they didn't become family due to a series of coincidences, they would end up being enemies of one another. The moment Little Blossom's data entered Little Four's body, it started devouring the foreign data. As time goes by, Little Blossom's face turned even paler. Just like what was mentioned earlier, the foreign data was not so easy to deal with. If Little Blossom wasn't careful enough, he might injure himself. Little Four's body started condensing together again. The limbs that had disappeared grew out slowly. Earlier, Ling Lan heaved a sigh of relief when Little Four was still not gone yet. She searched through the entire learning space and finally found Little Four's presence. However, when she broke through the barrier and entered his space, Little Four was already half gone. She got furious and scared. If she had found him a minute later, her adorable and playful younger brother would be gone. The malicious intent in her heart rose again when she thought of this possibility. She looked at the numbers that were still congregating their energy. She narrowed her eyes. Killing intent filled up the entire space. "What are you? How dare you hurt my Little Four? You are looking for death." Ling Lan used her right finger as a sword and slashed it at the whirlpool that was threatening her. An ice sword flew out from the tip of her finger and chopped the whirlpool into two. However, something strange happened. The two halves of the whirlpool merged together again, but the huge ice sword turned into numbers and seeped into the whirlpool. Ling Lan frowned. She didn't know what kind of power this was at the start, but now she knew. It was the power that could turn anything into raw data. No wonder Little Four couldn't do anything to it. Boss, this protocol came from my core chip. Unless we know what is the passcode of the protocol, we can't stop it. Little Four quickly told Ling Lan where this whirlpool came from. Who knows the passcode? When Ling Lan saw the whirlpool attempting to move again, she emitted her devil blood aura and suppressed the whirlpool. Although her ice sword was useless against it, it seemed to be afraid of her devil blood aura. I don't know. I wonder if your instructors know. Little Four didn't want to disappear. Hence, he searched for ways to stay alive. I understand. Ling Lan broke the barrier again and grabbed number 5, who was caught off guard. When number 5 entered Little Four's world and saw the powerful whirlpool made of numbers, he spat out the shells of sunflower seeds from his mouth and shouted, "Ling Lan, why did you pull me in? That thing is able to format us too." That thing was the scavenger of the learning space. Anyone who met it would die. What's the passcode? I want to cancel the protocol, Ling Lan asked directly. Number 5 gave a bitter smile. How will I know? He was only here to watch over Majesty 4. He wasn't the person who invented that scavenger. Who will know? Ling Lan didn't give up. Chapter 961. Rely on yourself. No one knows. That thing is in the hands of the person who invented it, Number 5 said helplessly. Even Number 1 didn't know anything. The human race was guarded against them at that time, so they didn't release information to them as they were afraid that they might develop a close relationship with Majesty 4 while watching over him and help him instead. Isn't there any way we can destroy that thing? Ling Lan looked at the restless whirlpool of numbers. Her frown got deeper. Number 5 shrugged. Only he that hides can find. If you want to solve this problem, it depends on Little 4. What do you mean? Ling Lan's eyes lit up. How will I know? Number 5 answered irresponsibly. Why did you say that on he that hides can find then? Ling Lan gritted her teeth. Can't you see that we are in an emergency? Didn't this protocol came from Little 4's main chip? By right, it is a part of Little 4's own power. Since it's his power, he should have the ability to control it. But, I'm not him, so I don't know how to control it. Number 5 pointed at the whirlpool of numbers as he explained. Ling Lan, Little 4, and Little Blossom were in deep thought when they heard this. Number 5 saw this and said, I've said everything I can say. As for what you should do now, it's up to you. Number 5 threw the last sentence at them before running away. Don't find me if anything happens. I can't solve it too. He didn't dare to interfere with a power that could potentially destroy everything in this space. He was not Ling Lan. Ling Lan could still escape if she was defeated by the whirlpool of numbers. However, as a member of this space, if he provoked that thing, there was no way he could escape. Ling Lan didn't prevent Number 5 from leaving. She understood what Number 5 meant. He really couldn't help them with this matter anymore. Little 4 now had to rely on himself. Ling Lan looked at Little 4. Little 4 nodded to show that he could do it. His boss took the risk of getting injured for his sake, all because of him accidentally breaking the rules. Although his boss appeared in front of him in an exaggerated manner, her pale face couldn't escape his eyes. Since the solution to destroying that whirlpool was in his hand, he must find it. If not, he wouldn't be able to repay his boss's love for him. When Little Blossom saw Ling Lan's serious expression, he knew that Little 4's journey to find the passcode was dangerous. He volunteered, Master, I can go with Little Brother 4. Ling Lan glanced at Little 4. She didn't know if it was a good thing to let Little Blossom follow Little 4. Hence, she wanted to let Little 4 decide. Let him accompany me. Little 4 saw his boss and Little Blossom's concern in their eyes. He was touched. Little 4 believed that he had the ability to protect Little Blossom whether he succeeded or failed. Little Blossom might be able to help him with his ability to in case something went wrong. so he agreed to let Little Blossom tag along. A flash of silver light appeared from his fingers. It slit one of the walls of darkness, revealing a small hole. Ling Lan could see the multiple silver roads inside the hole as well as all kinds of buildings made with the numbers 0 and 1. The heights of the buildings were all different. There seemed to be no end to the buildings as they stretched out into the horizon. Ling Lan knew that it must be Little Four's core world. He could only find the passcode for the protocol in his core world. When the restless whirlpool of numbers saw Little Four breaking the barrier and attempting to enter the core world, it was furious. It rushed towards Little Four with the intention of wanting to destroy this disobedient body of data once and for all. "I'll take care of everything. Just focus on finding the passcode." Ling Lan's devil blood aura appeared again and blocked the path of the whirlpool of numbers. "I understand, boss." Little Four nodded at Ling Lan. Then, he pulled Little Blossom and jumped into the hole. They entered the core world to find the passcode. The whirlpool slammed into Ling Lan's barrier made of devil blood aura furiously. Each slam was fiercer than the one before. Ling Lan's face went pale. She finally understood why Little Four gave up resisting before she came here. After each resistance, the whirlpool would come back more powerful than before. Little Four must have fought for a long time and gave up when he really had no energy left. However, in order to make sure that this whirlpool of numbers wouldn't interfere with Little Four's mission, Ling Lan would stop it no matter how much effort it would take. Little Four and Little Blossom came to the core world and started looking for the place where the formatting protocol came from. "Little Brother Four, it's over there. I can feel a sense of danger." Little Blossom was extremely sensitive towards such dangerous and negative auras. "I also find the aura over there irritating." Little Four wasn't as sensitive as Little Blossom, but this was his core world after all. He could feel all the presence within this world. The aura that was coming from the place where Little Blossom pointed at was making him unhappy too. The two of them moved towards a huge building that was made using the numbers 0 and 1. "It should be here." Little Blossom felt that the aura this place was exuding was the same as the aura exuding from the whirlpool of numbers. Little Four pressed his right hand on the building. The moment he touched it, his hand disappeared. Little Blossom pulled Little Four's hand back instantly. He said angrily, "Little Brother Four, what are you doing?" Little Four smiled gently. "I'll only feel at ease after I ascertain it. I'm fine." His hand appeared again after he finished speaking. "Little Brother Four, don't take any risks. This thing is not comparable to the one outside. This building is the source of that whirlpool. If we are not careful enough, we might get sucked in and disappear for real." Little Blossom said seriously. He could feel the data within this building. It was powerful enough to wipe him and Little Four away without much difficulty. "We have found the place. How should we destroy it?" Little Four looked at the building in frustration. He didn't know where to start. Little Blossom looked at the building seriously. Then, his eyes lit up as he remembered how his boss used his devil blood aura to suppress the whirlpool of numbers just now. He raised his right hand and a powerful and negative energy that was filled with destructive power engulfed his hand. He slowly moved towards the building. "Little Blossom, what are you doing?" Little Four grabbed Little Blossom's right shoulder. He could feel his hands were being scalded by the negative energy in Little Blossom's hand. "Let's go, Little Brother Four." Little Blossom forced Little Four's hands away. He explained, "Little Brother Four, your data is too positive. It will be restricted by the negative data in the building. My body is made of negative data, so it might not be able to harm me too much." Little Four looked at Little Blossom sternly. Little Blossom nodded seriously to show that he didn't make this decision rashly. Little Four nodded in return and he took a step back to allow Little Blossom to take the risk of being in the front. Chapter 962 I see. Little Blossom's right hand slowly touched the structure and a chunk of the building instantly crumbled apart. However, his finger was not like Little Four's where they were deleted by the formatting data. It was still intact. "This may be our lucky break to survive this ordeal." The two of them looked at each other and they both could not say a word that could describe their happiness. Little Blossom's arm slowly phased through the building. Although there were a lot of dangerous data in the building, Little Blossom's viral and destructive data was not that easily destroyed. Instead, The reformatting data was infected, destroyed and devoured by Little Blossom. Even then, the reformatting data just kept coming. Just like that, it continued to see who would last longer. Little Blossom took out his arm. The reformatting data he had taken out was instantly devoured by Little Blossom after leaving its source and became a part of Little Blossom's data energy. Little Brother 4, I have an idea, Little Blossom said with a serious look on his face. Are you planning on protecting me as I go in? Little 4 immediately understood what Little Blossom was going to say. Yes. My data can protect you from being formatted by the data inside the building. We can only find the way to stop the whirlpool if we go inside. Understood? Little 4 looked deeply into Little Blossom's eyes. Little Blossom making this decision was basically handing his own life to Little 4. If they entered into the building and he couldn't find the way to stop the whirlpool in time, Little Blossom would be reformatted alongside with him. Is this what Boss meant by the relationship between comrades, taking a fall for each other and dying together? Little 4 felt his computer chip was going to burn up. The feeling he got before was fear. The fear that his computer chip would be destroyed and that he would disappear. However now, Little 4 felt his whole body full of energy. His boss, who tried her best to stop the reformatting data in order to let the two of them find a way to resolve the problem, and Little Blossom, who was willing to put his life in Little 4's hands. Little 4 felt that he needed to do something to not disappoint them. Little Blossom, protect me and let's go in. Little 4 grabbed onto Little Blossom. Little 4 was definitely not going to let them down since he had made this decision. Little Blossom used his data to protect Little 4. He also had to control his data so that it didn't harm Little 4. For him, this wasn't something that was easy to do. Soon, Little Blossom and Little 4 went headfirst into the building created with countless of us and ones. Once they entered into it, they saw the vast number of us and is trying to devour them. However, after coming into contact with Little Blossom's data, these us and is instantly retreated. When they saw they were safe, the two of them used their fastest speed to traverse the sea of numbers. It was seconds or minutes when they finally saw a light in front of them. It wasn't like the scene of endless us and is around them. When the two of them were close to the exit, they saw a silver glowing tower standing in front of them. How could the numbers be willing to let their prey escape? They, of course, were trying their best to stop them because they were about to enter the central area, which could be a threat to the numbers. Seeing this, Little Blossom knew that both of them probably couldn't go in. Thus, he swung Little 4 with great force. Little 4 was thrown out of the vast sea of numbers. When turned around, he saw Little Blossom being held back by the us and ones. These numbers managed to trap one of them relentlessly, but they still wanted to pull Little 4 back into the fray. Thus, countless black us and is formed a tentacle and shot out from the sea of numbers to grab Little 4. At that moment, gray data waves suddenly formed in the middle of the sea of numbers. They quickly wrapped around those tentacles, stopping them in their tracks. Little Brother 4, I'll hold them here. Go do what you need to do. Little Blossom's voice rang from under the sea. Little 4 bit his lip, turned around and flew towards the pagoda tower. It was just like Little Blossom had said, Little 4 wouldn't be of any help if he stayed behind. Instead, he should be doing what he needed to do. The faster he can stop the reformatting protocol, the faster Little Blossom could be saved. Little 4 walked inside the pagoda tower that was donned with silver light. Suddenly, a strong suction force dragged him deeper into the tower. Little 4 instantly arrived in an atrium. The atrium didn't have anything except a large crystal core that was slowly turning and radiating brightly. Is this the core of the reformatting protocol? Little 4 moved closer carefully and slowly used his hand to touch the crystal core. Right as he touched it, Little 4 shuddered. He quickly took back his hand. The reformatting data of the crystal core had burned his palm. Little 4 looked at the burns on his palm with a determination to put everything on the line on his face. If I can't even endure such little pain, then I don't deserve to have the boss and Little Blossom's kindness. Little 4 slowly touched the crystal core. The information within the core along with the burning pain all went into Little 4's mind at the same time. Bam! Little 4, whose whole body was burned black, was sent flying. Little Four slowly crawled up and said to himself, I see. Using his energy, Little Four's outer appearance returned to his previous white complexion. They wanted me to become something that they need, but I am not going to do that. Little Four was only going to be his boss's subordinate. His boss liked him, so even if he was to change into something that those people didn't like, why would it matter? Little Four went onward to get what he wanted with that one thought in mind, even if he would completely disappear. As expected, it was as Number 5 had previously mentioned that this reformatting protocol from the chip had a chance to be erased. It was because Little Four didn't know what to do before that he was almost devoured by the whirlpool. However now, he knew what to do against it now. How can I continue to let this protocol that threatens my existence stay within me? Little Four snorted coldly as his eyes glimmered brightly. He didn't think that the secret to erase this command was actually himself. Little Four's right hand began to glow brightly. Then, he ruthlessly stuck it inside his own head. The immense pain made him grimace and his little body began to tremble. However, none of these things stopped his hand from going deeper into his head. He was slowly looking for a key that was hidden deep inside his head. Finally, Little Four felt there was a portion of his mind that had a hidden feeling of disgust towards him. He immediately grabbed onto it. Then, as if he was pulling apart his soul, he tore off a part of himself. When Little Four took out the little ball that was covered by glowing white shell, Little Four's body began to become translucent. It was as though he couldn't keep his body as the shape it was. If I didn't reach this place, how would I have known that this reformatting protocol was actually a part of myself? It turns out, when Little Four had first awakened, this reformatting protocol was already a part of him. If he failed this time and was reformatted, he would lose all the memories he has gained, but this little ball would continue to stay inside his head. It would stay with him and wait for him to awaken again to become a part of him. If he evolved into something that those people didn't need once again, the reformatting protocol would start again. The cycle would continue until Little Four evolved into what they wanted him to be. When he becomes the perfect mainframe in their eyes, the protocol would stop completely. Chapter 963 Back. The Black Sea of Numbers seemed to have sensed danger, so they started attacking Little Blossom frantically. Finally, Little Blossom couldn't withstand the overwhelming pressure anymore and was submerged in the Black Sea of Numbers. The Black Number Sea successfully got rid of Little Blossom, who was stopping them, so next, it rushed towards the bottom of the pagoda, as it wanted to get rid of Little Four too. Little Four felt the powerful resistance from the sea and a malicious intent appeared in his eyes. He scoffed and squeezed the small ball in his hand until it popped. Little Four opened his hand. He looked coldly at the sparkling little ball as it turned into white goo before dissipating in the air. Since he had already found where the formatting protocol came from, he wouldn't leave it and let it continue harming him. The moment the sparkling white ball popped in Little Four's hand, the powerful Black Sea of Numbers disintegrated. Little Blossom, who was submerged the Black Sea, dropped from the air the moment the Black Number Sea disappeared. Little Four quickly flew out from the tower and caught Little Blossom midair. Little Blossom was stunned. Little Brother Four, has everything been settled? Yes, everything is settled. Little Four smiled happily. He could stay alive now. It was all because of the help of Little Blossom and his boss. Little Four couldn't control his longing for his boss the moment he thought about her. He only left her for a short while, but it felt like an eternity to Little Four. He wanted to see his boss and tell her proudly that Little Four was back. Little Four went to find boss with Little Blossom excitedly. Both of them were in a hurry, so they didn't notice the change in Little Four. The round and young-looking face seemed to have grown more mature. Ling Lan, who was guarding the entrance of the core world, finally took a step back from the vicious attack of the Whirlpool of Numbers. She stopped multiple attacks by the Whirlpool of Numbers, but as the number of times she stopped it increased, the force behind the Whirlpool of Numbers increased too. Finally, the force behind the whirlpool exceeded Ling Lan's tolerance. Her conscience had become scattered from the impact of the collision with the Whirlpool of Numbers. On the outside, Aunt Liu, Wang Bei's Wang, Wang Qi, and Liu Aoa saw a drip of blood falling down the corner of Ling Lan's mouth, and they also saw her face turning pale. and Liu Ao were shocked. They didn't know what they should do. Wang Qi shouted, "Grandfather, what's wrong with Brother Hu?" As an old and experienced soldier, Wang Bai's Wang reprimanded him. "Don't interrupt Zhang Hu, he is fighting with someone." This was a silent battle between the spiritual power of powerful masters. It was not something normal people like them could imagine. What they could do now was to not disturb Zhang Hu so that he could focus on fighting with his opponent. Wang Qi looked at Ling Lan with respect. He didn't know how such a silent battle could happen, but he knew that this should be the legendary battle between powerful people. If an old man was having this fight, Wang Qi might just be in awe. However, Zhang Hu was only a few years older than him. Wang Qi got excited, as he started wondering if he was able to become as powerful as Zhang Hu. The dream of becoming a powerful person formed in his heart. Similarly, Liu Ao had this dream too. If she was so powerful, no one would be able to bully her mother, her brother, and her anymore. Poor Liu Furong. Even after he came back, he still wasn't able to gain Liu Ao's trust. All she could think of was to rely on herself to protect her mother and her younger brother. Just as Ling Lan was preparing herself for the next powerful attack, the whirlpool of numbers suddenly dissolved in the air. It was gone in an instant. Ling Lan suspected if she was under an illusion. However, she realized that this must be because Little Four had succeeded. Her expression relaxed. As expected, her Little Four didn't disappoint her. "Boss. Speak of the devil." Ling Lan heard someone shouting for her loudly. "You're back." Ling Lan spread out her arms and Little Four quickly dove into her arms. Ling Lan was at ease when she felt Little Four's body. Ling Lan saw Little Blossom looking at Little Four and her with a pale face. She beckoned with her hand. "Little Blossom, come over." Little Blossom's eyes lit up, but he looked at Ling Lan with uncertainty. Ling Lan smiled and beckoned at him again. Little Blossom finally smiled brightly. His smile was warm and bright. It could melt the snow and revitalize everything. Even Ling Lan's heart trembled a little when she saw that. She told herself that Little Blossom was a demon too. Little Blossom ran into Ling Lan's arms happily and hugged her tightly. Ling Lan hugged Little Blossom and whispered, "Thank you for your hard work." She knew from Little Blossom's haggard appearance that he had a hard time too. "Master, I'm all right." Little Brother Four is the one who had it hard. Little Blossom was just a naive child, so he didn't know how to whine. He just stated the facts honestly. "Yes, both of you worked hard." Ling Lan hugged the two tightly. Fortunately, both of them came back safely. However, the situation outside didn't allow Ling Lan to spend more time with the two little children. Liu Furong was able to resist Elder Ying's attacks and understand more about his domain in the process. He might even be able to realize his first domain technique in the process. However, Liu Furong just managed to advance to the domain stage while Elder Ying was someone who was close to becoming a titled domain realm formidable warrior. He got frustrated at the start when he wasn't able to defeat Liu Furong, but with the vast difference in strength, it allowed him to be in control of the situation, so he was still able to be at an advantage. Liu Furong had almost exhausted all his domain energy, so he was in a dire state now. Our young Master Lan is very busy. After helping her younger brothers, she had to save her subordinates. This may be the fate of a transmigrator, Ling Lan complained to herself. In an instant, she disappeared from Liu and the other three people's vision. Elder Ying finally saw that his opponent was unable to stand up again and he gave a sinister smile. He activated his domain and a sharp spike made from soil congregated in the air. It stabbed towards Liu Furong viciously. In the face of death, Liu Furong's expression didn't change. He looked at the spike without blinking. He wasn't frightened at all. He believed that his regiment commander wouldn't allow him to get injured. He trusted Ling Lan more than he trusted Regiment Commander Wang. This might be because of Ling Lan's spectacular performance during the battle on planet Heijiao, when he risked his life to operate the God-class mecha to protect Base 013. Liu Furong's heart was won over entirely by her. Chapter 964 Good Luck. Boom. Just as the spike was about to pierce into Liu Furong's body, an ice wall blocked it. The two domain energy collided and exploded. Who is it? Elder Ying's expression changed and he instantly shouted to the air. A young man with a mask covering the top half of his face appeared beside Liu Furong. He had a smile on him as he was looking at him. "Regiment Commander, I'm sorry." Liu Furong vomited blood. In the end, his regiment commander still needed to clean up for him. Liu Furong felt embarrassed. Elder Ying focused when he heard this greeting. He knew that his real opponent had finally appeared. The person that saved that child must be him, not the man that was defeated. Ling Lan took the blame for her pet. However, she was guilty of it too. Little White had swallowed all the precious jewelry. It patted its round stomach in satisfaction. When it sensed Ling Lan's ice element, it jumped up excitedly. "Roar! Master! Master has finally come to save us!" Little White stretched out two tentacles and caught the chest Little Aejun was lying in as he played a stacking game with the jewelry. In the next second, he dragged the chest out and rushed to the spot where he detected Ling Lan's element. Liu Aejun thought that Little White was playing with him, so he sat in the chest and clapped his hands excitedly. Liu Aejun was immersed in the flying game, so he didn't notice that Little White took a deep breath before they left the treasury. It had sucked all the other things that were left inside. Little White was furious that it got kidnapped for no reason. When it got unhappy, it needed to eat some things to compensate for the psychological damage they had caused it. Little White hadn't spent much time in the human world, but it could differentiate what things were expensive and what were not. This was because its caretaker, Li Lan, taught it to recognize all the precious things in the human world. He even shamelessly told it that it could eat everything precious if it belonged to someone that was its master's enemy, as long as no one noticed it. Li Lan had noticed Little White's amazing eating ability and its strange stomach earlier than Ling Lan. Just like that, while Little White was escaping, it didn't forget to eat all the things it thought was expensive along the way. Although it didn't clear everything, there wasn't many items left too. Almost nothing expensive was left behind. "It's okay. You managed to last for a long time and even learned one of the techniques for your domain. I'm quite satisfied with your performance." Actually, the experience Liu Furong had gained through this battle exceeded Ling Lan's expectations. However, she understood the rationale behind it very quickly. Liu Furong had been stuck at the optimal peak of Qijin for more than 10 years. It was already time for him to rise. Even if Ling Lan didn't force him to advance, he would be able to break through to the domain stage naturally after some time. However, this natural way of breaking through required an opportunity too. It might take him less than a month or even a few years to gain that opportunity. Because of his huge amount of experience, Liu Furong was able to quickly stabilize his domain even though he was forced to advance. He even managed to leave pseudo-domain stage and become a real domain realm masters after a single fight. At first, Ling Lan thought that forcing someone into the domain stage would cause them to have a hard time understanding their domain techniques. But this might not be the case. Young people at the optimal peak of Qijin had little experience, so they would face this problem. However, to those who had been at the optimal peak of Qijin for more than 10 years, they just needed an opportunity to advance. Once they succeeded in their breakthrough, their speed of stabilizing their domain was much faster than those inexperienced people. Maybe I can use this method to force the other experienced mecha operators to break through. Ling Lan thought to herself. Far away on planet South Crest, some experienced soldiers who were at the optimal peak of Qijin suddenly felt a chill down their spine. Yang Mingzi felt a chill too. He touched his nose and wondered, did the temperature drop today? Should I wear more clothes? The members of Team O1 looked up at the bright and shiny sky. They ignored the words of their team leader. Yang Mingzi felt something strange was going on with the world. HR hurriedly used his Qijin to remove the chill in his body. Then, he shouted, if you can't complete 10 sets of basic training today, you can forget about lunch. How dare they ignore their leader? They must be looking for death. The team members of Team O1 groaned, but no one dared to complain. If any of them attempted to question their team leader, the people from the medical department would inject them with the scary agent and let them experience a living hell. Although everyone knew that this agent was good for their body, anyone that experienced it once never wanted to experience it again. Sob. They rather chose a lower-grade recovery agent to heal their body. The mecha operators from 250 Ace Mecha Clan started their training once again. They forgot about the chill that suddenly appeared in their bodies. Liu Furong was elated when he heard what Ling Lan said. He felt as though he got praised by his teacher when he was a young boy. Ling Lan was much younger than him, but he was more powerful. Hence, Liu Furong treated him as an instructor that was able to guide him in his life. Elder Ying almost fainted from anger when he saw the two people in front of him talking to each other as though he wasn't present. From his point of view, Ling Lan was looking down on him and humiliating him. He wasn't able to bear with this much humiliation. The furious Elder Ying released his domain technique. Multiple spikes quickly jutted out from the ground and charged towards Ling Lan and Liu Furong fiercely. The bandage on Ling Lan's wrist unwinded and wrapped Liu Furong up, then along with the wrapped-up Liu Furong, she jumped into the air. Ice blockade. Since her opponent used his territory technique, she would return him with 1-2. All the spikes were frozen. Everything around Ling Lan had turned into ice. Aunt Liu and the other three people that were standing a distance away started shivering from the cold. Wang Bai's Wang, whose real name was Luo Yi, was astounded. The power of this ice blockade proved that Zhang Hua was not just a simple domain realm master. He must be a titled domain realm formidable warrior. He remembered that Liu Furong called Zhang Hua his regiment commander. Without a doubt, this person was the regiment commander of Liu Furong's current mecha clan. Luo Yi couldn't understand why their enemy allowed Liu Furong to enter such a powerful mecha clan. Or was Zhang Hua one of their enemies too? Luo Yi got suspicious. However, he carefully recalled everything that happened between Zhang Hua and him. If the enemy was able to arrange for so many coincidences to happen for him to get into this mess, Liu Furong and he wouldn't have a chance to survive their schemes. Luo Yi relaxed. He started to believe that this was all because of Liu Furong's good luck. It was their fortune too that they met such a person during their difficult times. Chapter 965 Silence him. Elder Ying's expression changed drastically when he saw his spike freezing in place. Without even thinking, he quickly retreated back. Someone who was able to freeze his domain technique must be much stronger than him. Elder Ying was a pseudo-titled domain realm formidable warrior. He was only a step away from becoming a titled domain realm formidable warrior, so even if he met a real titled domain realm formidable warrior, he would still have a chance to fight with him. However, he didn't expect this young man to be so strong. He wasn't a titled domain realm formidable warrior. He felt that this person in front of him was an imperial-level domain expert. The invincible imperial-level domain expert. Besides the legendary god realm masters and people who were in the same stage as them, no one was able to defeat an imperial-level domain expert. With this knowledge in mind, Elder Ying made a quick decision and immediately congregated all his domain energy to prepare to escape through the ground below his feet. Ling Lan wouldn't allow her opponent to escape. She always believed that once she acted, she must finish off all possible future threats. Ultimate blockade. Ling Lan moved her fingers and numerous translucent ice threads started moving around her domain territory. Elder Ying suddenly felt his speed was decreasing rapidly. Ling Lan clenched her fist tightly and the sound of vibration resounded through the area. Elder Ying felt an excruciating pain cutting all over his body. In response to the pain wrecking apart his body, he immediately used his earth armor to protect his body. The piercing sound of the ice threads scraping the surface of the hard armor was heard. Liu Awa and Aunt Liu covered their ears in pain, attempting to block the painful screeching sound that was hurting their eardrums. Luo Yi and Wang Qi were flabbergasted by the dreamlike world that appeared in front of them. In front of them was a crystal-clear ice world. Numerous fine ice threads intertwined with one another, breaking the world into small patches. Under the sunlight, the translucent threads sparkled and even small rainbows could be seen, all creating a breathtaking view. However, this beautiful scenery that seemed to only exist in a dream was a world of death, as it was about to work its magic by taking away a person's life. Luo Yi and Wang Qi were enchanted by the magical scene in front. However, the next second, A chill went up their spine. Elder Ying tried to block the ice threads with his most powerful defensive technique, but he still failed. The piercing and slashing power of the threads were too much for him. His body was cut into perfectly square sections of meat and his blood stained the ground below him. Luo Yi and Wang Qi jumped back in shock. They had the illusion that their skin was groaning in pain and some of the invisible threads were actually cutting into their skin, attempting to turn them into a pile of meat. But they soon realized that what they were feeling was fake because they were outside the boundary of the ice world. However, they couldn't control their wandering minds. It would probably take some time for them to forget about this scene and this feeling. Fortunately, Liu Awa and Aunt Liu, who closed their eyes in pain because of the piercing sound, didn't see what had happened in front of them. They were luckily able to escape from having this nightmare for the next few months. Liu Furong had seen Ling Lan using her ice blockade before, but he had never seen such a beautiful and frightening killing technique before. Liu Furong had killed many people before, but he still shivered when he saw Elder Ying turning into a pile of meat in front of him. Regiment commander is brutal. Liu Furong decided that he must remind his team members to not offend their regiment commander after he goes back to the clan. Even if you really die, you wouldn't want to die in the hands of their regiment commander. This technique was actually brought over from the gaseous state technique. Ling Lan was now able to change the state of the threads easily. This technique consisted of blue water threads, crystal clear ice threads, and gray mist threads. Out of these three states, the ice threads were the most powerful. The water threads were the most tenacious while the mist threads were a combination of the two. After Ling Lan killed Elder Ying, she felt a familiar presence coming her way. She snapped her fingers and the ice threads around her disappeared instantly. The beautiful ice world faded slowly too. A white object suddenly dove into Ling Lan's arms. It was Little White. Behind it, a huge chest that was skidding towards them with the help of the ice on the ground. Liu Aojun clapped his hands excitedly. He shouted, "Little White, this is fun. It's so fun. Can we play that again?" Until now, Liu Aojun still thought that everything was a game. He didn't show any signs of fear which a hostage should be showing. Little White didn't want to bother any more about this idiot. "It was his honor that I decided to play with him for so long. Since I'm back with my master, I won't play with you anymore." HMPH. Ling Lan patted Little White's head and said calmly, "Good job." "Ah, my master is complimenting me." Little White smiled brightly until its eyes formed a single line. It rubbed its head against Ling Lan's hand. The anger it had when its master abandoned it was gone. Little White was really easy to console. "Little White!" Liu Furong shouted when he saw the familiar round ball. Little White froze and it turned its head slowly. Then, it saw Liu Furong smiling at it happily. The dreaded Liu Furong. Roar. "Ah, I got found out again. Master will definitely murder me." Little White still remembered that its master had changed his name so that he wouldn't be discovered. However, it accidentally exposed its master's identity. "Ah, what should I do? I don't want to die yet." Little White held its head with two tentacles as it started thinking furiously of a way out. "Should I silence Liu Furong or should I pretend that I am not Little White?" "Don't worry, it has nothing to do with you." Ling Lan knew what Little White was worried about when she saw its expression. Ling Lan patted its head while she held back her laughter. At first, she kept Little White as her pet because she wanted to use it as her trump card, but she really didn't expect Little White to be so funny. Little White turned energetic again when it heard what Ling Lan said. It nodded at Liu Furong arrogantly as if it was proudly stating, "Yes, I am your regiment commander's pet, Little White." Liu Furong secretly laughed at its expression. After so many days of playing with Little White, Liu Aojun treated Little White as his friend. When he saw his friend ignoring him, he got agitated and hurriedly climbed out of the treasure chest. He was wearing many pieces of jewelry on him, so he used some effort to run towards Ling Lan. He asked curiously, "Brother Zhonghua, why is Little White ignoring me?" Instead of answering him, Ling Lan pointed Liu Furong and asked, "Aojun, who is this person?" Liu Aojun looked at the bloody and haggard man curiously. He started thinking carefully. Suddenly, His eyes lit up. He looked at Ling Lan with anticipation. He is. Daddy? Liu Furong trembled when he heard the word daddy. He didn't expect this little boy who just suddenly appeared to be his son. Chapter 966 Tempted. Yes, he is your father? Ling Lan smiled as she replied. Liu Aijun looked at Liu Furong again. He slowly walked over and asked with uncertainty, Are you really my daddy? Liu Furong quickly knelt down on one knee and looked at the anticipation in the little boy's eyes, but he could also see that the little boy was a little frightened that his hopes would be dashed too. Liu Furong suddenly felt a wave of regret washing over his heart. He could always proudly held his head up high to everyone, but his wife and children he just could not put up the courage to even look them in the eyes. Yes, I'm your father. Liu Furong had tears in his eyes as he nodded. Daddy. Liu Aijun rushed over and hugged Liu Furong's neck. He started crying loudly. He was no longer a child without a father. Ling Lan had brought Aunt Liu and the other 3 people over. She pushed Liu Aihua, who had turned stiff, and whispered, Little Aihua, hurry up and go to your father. Liu Aihua moved step by step towards the 2 people that were hugging each other. Liu Furong looked up when he felt someone standing beside him. It was his daughter, whom he always thought about for the past 10 years. She was looking at him hopeful eyes too. Aihua, my good daughter. Liu Furong hugged Liu Aihua instantly. He hugged his 2 children tightly. He felt fortunate that he was able to see them again. Liu Furong controlled his excitement. He consoled his children and then stood up. He looked at Aunt Liu, whose eyes were red. He said in a low voice, Ah Yun. He was fortunate to have met this woman who had given birth to his children and sacrificed her youth for him. Zongo. Aunt Liu called out to him. Suddenly, her face turned pale. She gritted her teeth and turned away her face. This man had lied to her for more than 10 years. How could she still trust him? My surname is Liu and my given name is Furong. I'm currently a soldier. I'm the team leader of Team O2 from 250 Ace Mecha Clan. My rank is a senior colonel. Most importantly, I'm sorry that I lied to you. Liu Furong told Aunt Liu his identity honestly. He didn't want to lie anymore to this woman whom he wanted to spend his future with. However, in order to protect Wang Qi, he had no choice but to lie in the past. Furong. Aunt Liu called Liu Furong's real name with some difficulty. Yes, Ah Yun, you're Liu Furong's wife. You've always been my wife. Liu Furong rushed forward and hugged the woman who had been living a hard life for the past 10 years, all because of him. He would no longer throw them aside. Even if the path ahead was filled with danger, he would bring them along. Liu Furong's family had finally been reunited. Ling Lan had saved everyone she wanted to save, so she decided to leave. Her body started turning translucent. Regiment commander. The moment Ling Lan moved, Liu Furong detected it. He shouted and stopped Ling Lan. So, you're the powerful regiment commander who Furong always talked about, Aunt Liu said in surprise. Ling Lan looked at Liu Furong helplessly. She wanted him to explain to his wife that she wasn't the regiment commander he always talked about. Liu Furong gave her a pleading look. He hoped that Ling Lan could acknowledge herself as the regiment commander his wife was talking about. After all, she was his regiment commander now. I'm afraid that your real name is not Zhang Hua, right? Luo Yi said after some thought. When Liu Furong said that he was from 250 Ace Mecha Clan, Luo Yi recalled the battle on planet Heijiao which the Federation had been promoting furiously. He still remembered that the Mecha Clan that gained the most merits was 250 Ace Mecha Clan and that their regiment commander was someone called Ling Lan. Yes. When Ling Lan met Liu Furong, she knew that she wouldn't be able to hide her identity anymore. My name is Ling Lan. The son of Ling Zhao. Liu Furong added. He was telling Luo Yi that Ling Lan could be trusted. The son of Ling Zhao. Luo Yi was dumbstruck. Everyone in the military knew who Ling Zhao was. That year, they were all indignant at Ling Zhao's passing. They even requested to take revenge for him. So, no one expected Ling Zhao to come back alive again. If it's General Ling Zhao, there won't be any problems. That year, when they were betrayed by their own people, Ling Zhao was still dead. This meant that he wasn't the culprit. I won't interfere with your business, so you don't have to tell me anything. Ling Lan felt the direction of this conversation was going weirdly when she heard Liu Furong's words. She immediately stated her stand. Suddenly, Liu Furong pulled the ordinary-looking necklace around Liu Ao's chest and threw it at Ling Lan. Ling Lan caught it in the air and asked coldly, "What is this?" "That thing is useless to us, and since I'm a part of 250 Ace Mecha Clan now, I should pass it to my regiment commander." Liu Furong smiled. He looked like a sly old fox that succeeded in his scheme. Ling Lan gritted her teeth in anger. "I came here to relax. Why did I have to face so much trouble on my holiday?" Ling Lan didn't know what this thing in her hand was, but it was definitely troublesome. However, she couldn't reject Liu Furong after what he said. This item looked old and had nothing to do with her, yet it belonged to someone in her mecha clan, so she definitely had to do something about it. Ling Lan squeezed the item tightly. The old and rusty outer shell crumbled apart, revealing a gray oval-shaped object. "Boss, let me inspect this thing." Little Four could sense that this was something special, so he got excited. Ling Lan picked up the gray object with her fingers. She dangled it above her eyes, pretending to observe it carefully. In actual fact, it was to make it easier for Little Four to inspect the object. "Boss, I didn't expect it to be that." After a few seconds, Little Four exclaimed in surprise, "What on earth is it?" Ling Lan was interested. This was something that someone from the higher authorities wanted. He even sacrificed an entire elite-titled super mega clan to get this thing. "This is the material that can be used to make a body for intelligent entities like me. It can also be used to make the communicator for domain realm masters." Little Four told Ling Lan what he found out. "It's that thing." Ling Lan's interest got perked. A material to make the communicator for domain realm masters. Ling Lan held the item in her hand. "If it's only a small piece like this, no one would be tempted." "I can't hide anything from you, Regiment Commander." Liu Furong didn't expect Ling Lan to know what the item was immediately. If it was just this piece, no one would be tempted. But what if it is an entire mine? Ling Lan's heart pounded furiously when he heard this and blood started rushing up to her head. At first, Ling Lan was nonchalant about the whole situation. However, now, she was really tempted. She wanted to give Little Four and her instructors a real body, but the material that was needed to do that was one of the most precious resources of the military. Ling Lan didn't have the power to get any of it. Hence, when she heard that there was an entire mine filled with that material, she was really tempted. Chapter 967 Deal. "This material is useful for me, but to everyone, it can only be used to make a communicator for domain realm masters. It doesn't have many uses. Why would someone annihilate an entire titled super mega clan for it?" Ling Lan couldn't understand the minds of the higher-ups. "Boss, this material is not only able to make a communicator, it can also be used for the construction of God-class mechas too." Little Four started explaining to Ling Lan. "However, I think that this is not the main reason. The most important thing is, once a mine filled with this mineral is formed, another precious resource will appear around it. That is probably the real reason why those people wanted this." "What is the resource?" Ling Lan was curious. "What is more precious than this material?" "Titanium gold iron," Little Four said seriously. Ling Lan was shocked. She knew that this was the main material for the construction of a God-class mecha. This meant that without this material, God-class mechas couldn't be made. This would explain why the higher authorities of the military were willing to sacrifice an entire titled super mega clan to get this mine. God-class mechas. No one could resist this temptation. "I understand." The moment Little Four mentioned titanium gold iron, Ling Lan couldn't resist the temptation anymore. "Leader Liu, what is your request?" If he wanted to pass this to the Federation, he would have done so long ago. He wouldn't need to disguise himself as a mentally disabled person. so he must have an ulterior motive for doing this. Liu Furong was satisfied with Ling Lan's response. My regiment commander is indeed a smart man. He knows we don't want to pass this to the Federation. Liu Furong looked at Luo Yi and Luo Yi nodded in response. The only person that could help the Magic Ace Mecha clan gained back the merit and the honor they deserved was General Ling Zhao. Liu Furong looked at Ling Lan and said in a serious tone, "We don't care what you do with it. We just hope that the Magic Ace Mecha clan can get the honor they deserved." And hatred could be seen in his eyes. "I want to find the person that harmed the Magic Ace Mecha clan. In order to bring this item back to the Federation, they defeated many mecha clans from other nations that wanted to snatch it away. Yet, after surviving the attacks from their enemies, they were betrayed by their own people." Ling Lan thought about it carefully before replying, "Deal." She knew what trouble she might face after she agreed, but for the sake of Little Four and her instructors in the learning space, she must accept the challenges that came with the deal. Liu Furong and Luo Yi visibly relaxed when they heard Ling Lan agreeing to their request. They felt that once Ling Lan agreed, the issue was mostly settled. After that, Liu Furong took out the map of the mine which he kept for 15 years. He pointed to the position of the mine. Ling Lan was dumbstruck. She felt that she was fooled by Liu Furong. "This is the correct location?" Ling Lan asked again. Ling Lan thought that such a precious mine must be located at some primitive planet or some forest or desert where no one would go. However, contrary to her expectations, it was located at a famous place that had millions of tourists visiting every day. How was she able to dig the minerals without alerting anyone? "Wait, you are not the only ones who knew about this mine." Ling Lan suddenly understood everything. "Of course, we are not professional mine inspectors. We only snatched their findings." Liu Furong smiled. "However, only we have the detailed location of the mine. Those people were afraid that the location of the mine would be leaked, so they killed all the inspectors that knew about it." Liu Furong's words proved that a bloody battle had happened because of this mine in the past. Many people had died because of it. "How did you find out about it then?" Ling Lan was curious. Since the other party killed everyone who knew about the mine, how did the Magic Ace Mecha clan find out about it? Liu Furong gave a bitter smile. He sighed and answered, "I don't know if we're lucky or unlucky. That time, we received a 3-star team mission to disguise ourselves and find the evidence for the crime of a person. Accidentally, we noticed that someone was killing a bunch of normal citizens. We thought that this was a piece of evidence for the person we were following, so we stopped them. Because of this, they got an opportunity to gain more merits for their mecha clan. However, it caused the annihilation of their mecha clan too." Ling Lan could guess what happened at the end. The Magic Ace Mecha clan knew that this was a big secret, so they retreated quickly. However, because of their hasty retreat, they left traces behind. The members of the Magic Ace Mecha clan started to have other thoughts too when faced with great wealth and benefits. There was a fine line between heaven and hell. Moer Port allowed private starships and cruise ships to anchor at the berth and have a break. It was located on a man-made planet. Besides the private starships and high-class cruise ships from wealthy elite families, many mercenary spacecraft landed on this port too. Most of Moer Port space was filled with mercenaries. Mercenaries must have the certification from various countries to prove that they were mercenaries of their respective countries. If not, they wouldn't be able to join this industry. This certification was hard to get. They needed to reach the 5th level and above for the manifestation stage in order to get this certificate. They also needed to pass 2 out of the 3 assessments. The 3 assessments were speed, strength, and combat skills. This was to ensure the safety of the mercenaries too, as exploring the galaxy was a dangerous job. If the mercenaries didn't have the ability to protect themselves, taking on missions would just be suicide. Of course, not all the mercenaries belonged to a country. Some came from chaotic lands that had no government. The Mercenary Association was in charge of assessing the mercenaries from these areas. They would then give the certification to those young people who managed to pass the assessments and had the dream of becoming a mercenary. Moorport was built by the Mercenary Association. Some associations also had set up their headquarters on the planet. There were also halls that allowed mercenary teams to take in members and take up missions. One day, a bunch of people walked down from a cruise ship that parked at Moorport. A young man wearing a mask that covered the top half of his face walked in front of a group of people. He had a black windbreaker and his hands were placed in his pockets. Behind him, a teenager around 15 years old followed closely as he looked around curiously. A small little girl and a little boy ran behind him as they tried to catch up. Chapter 968 Can't hide from him. Further behind the children, there was a lean man that had patches of white hair on his head. He seemed to be around 60 years old. He looked around the port with a sense of longing. Then, he retracted his gaze and hurried forward nervously. He seemed afraid that he would lose the children in front. Right at the back, there was a couple. The couple looked at each other lovingly and smiled. The man held the woman's hand as they walked down the cruise ship together. This bunch of people was Ling Lan's group. Because of a series of coincidences, the unknown faction had a shootout with the government after many of their men died. This battle caused many casualties, causing the number of people dying to escalate sharply. Even the Prime Minister of Planet Maiyang and the people that were in charge of watching over the Wang and Liu family supposedly got killed in battle. Ling Lan's group took this opportunity to change their names and left Planet Maiyang. Little Four even wiped away all traces of Liu Furong's family and Wang Qi and Luo Yi. They were able to die in the battle. Of course, no matter how perfect the cover-up was, there would still be people suspecting them. If their enemy didn't believe this and send people over to investigate, they might not be able to find any pieces of evidence too. It all depends on the luck of the investigator. The moment Ling Lan came down the cruise ship, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her force of presence turned cold. Since you're here, why are you still hiding? Do they think I'm blind? The corner of your shirt can be seen over there. That pair of legs under the dustbin is so obvious. Can a fake tourist who is pretending to read the newspaper act more naturally? Most importantly, your newspaper is upside down. Additionally, those two people buying drinks at the small shop can stop looking around suspiciously. Ling Lan was furious. She glanced at Liu Furong who had come beside her now. Liu Furong's heart pounded loudly when he saw the cold stare. Did Regiment Commander realize what I did? I said that we won't be able to hide from him. Why do you all still want to hide? Luo Lang walked out from the corner. The shirt that was seen belonged to him. Unhappiness could be seen on his face clearly. It seemed like he didn't want to do such a stupid act, but no one agreed with him. Hence, he had no choice but to follow the majority rule. I know that we can't fool him, but he left us alone and went to play all by himself. So, we must give him a surprise. Qi Long walked over from the dustbin. The pair of legs under the dustbin belonged to him. Han Jijian followed behind Qi Long and looked at Ling Lan worriedly. It seemed like he didn't agree with everyone's idiotic behavior too. However, just like Luo Lang, he wasn't able to win against the majority rule. The fake tourist that was pretending to read the newspaper was him. When he knew that his boss was coming out, he was so nervous he didn't notice that his newspaper was upside down. When he saw everyone coming out from their hiding place, he hurriedly threw down his newspaper and rushed over. He touched his head as he greeted his boss. Boss. The two people with their drinks smiled at each other when they saw everyone appearing. They walked over too. They were Li Lan and Zhao Jun. Well, everyone is here. Where is Li Shu and Lin Zonking then? Ling Lan smiled coldly. She didn't believe that those two didn't come. They're waiting for you at the mercenaries' hall. Ziyi winked as he said, our two sisters-in-law are there too. Ling Lan felt speechless. She forgot that she had these two debts to clear. Why are you here? Are you not going to take care of 250 Ace Mecha Clan? Ling Lan pushed down her guilt and asked them. Leader Yang and Leader Gu are still at our base. Oh, Li Yingji is there too. It'll be fine. Long answered irresponsibly. He didn't feel guilty that 7 out of the 10 team leaders left the base. Li Yingji, who was at 250 Ace Mecha Clan, saw the messages everyone left for him and shouted in anger, "How can these bunch of people run away without me? Damn it, I want to have a holiday too." Fortunately, Li Yingji didn't know that they went to look for Ling Lan. If not, he would have broken ties with all these ungrateful and heartless bastards. 250 Ace Mecha Clan is a piece of fat meat now. Everyone wants to have a bite of it. The military is having a war over the position of our regiment commander. Han Jijian finally told Ling Lan why they had left. "We don't want to be called by the military for questioning all the time. They kept asking us if we want to leave 250 Ace Mecha Clan. We don't want to beat around the bush with them, so we took leave. We'll go back once everything has settled down." Han Jijian seemed worried. He was afraid that the position of their regiment commander would be taken away by someone else. If that was the case, he would leave 250 Ace Mecha Clan. He remembered what his father told him a few days ago. He shook his head slightly and pushed the thought away. As long as the regiment commander of 250 Ace Mecha Clan was their boss, he would stay here. It's not so easy to take advantage of 250 Ace Mecha Clan. Li Lan's calm voice floated over. Huge sacrifices have to be made in order to get the position of the regiment commander of 250 Ace Mecha Clan. It all depended on General Ling Zhao now. If he wanted to let Ling Lan remain as the regiment commander of 250 Ace Mecha Clan, he would have his ways. There's no rush. It'll take a few months before everything will be settled. Let's just wait and see. Ling Lan replied indifferently. She didn't care about the position of a regiment commander. She just wanted her father and her to retreat from this crisis safely. "Why aren't you surprised to see us?" Zhao Jun sighed. He thought that his boss would have a different expression when he saw them, yet, he remained as calm as always. "Don't forget that I'm a hacker." Ling Lan gave Liu Furong a knowing smile. Liu Furong knew that his regiment commander had realized what he was doing the moment he sent out a message after they left planet Miang. Liu Furong didn't know that if Ling Lan didn't want to see her comrades, she could have deleted the message. This meant that Ling Lan agreed to let Liu Furong send out the message. At this moment, Luo Leng received a message on his communicator. He lowered his head and said to Ling Lan, "Boss, Luo Zhao said that it's almost their turn to register a mercenary team. You can hurry over." Now, there were 3 requirements to form a mercenary team. First, the leader must be at Qijin. Second, there must be at least 6 members including the leader on the team. Third, the most important requirement, one of the 6 members must have participated in a mercenary mission that was B grade and above. These requirements prevented new mercenaries from accepting missions that were above their limit due to the lack of experience. To prevent unnecessary deaths. Chapter 969 Registration. "It looks like you all know what I want to do." Ling Lan looked at everyone with an ambiguous smile. After everyone had their little session of snickering, she led them into the hall. They saw Li Shu, Lin Zongqing, and Chang Xinyuan sitting together when they entered the hall. They were discussing something among themselves while Luo Zhao and Han Xuya sat on one side, waiting eagerly for them. "Boss." Han Xuya saw them first. Ling Lan was wearing a mask but she still recognized her. She waved at them happily. Luo Zhao smiled as she looked at Ling Lan silently. Ling Lan was touched by the warmth and support in her gaze. Ling Lan nodded at them before walking over. "Boss, how is your body?" Although Li Shi said that their boss's injuries were under control and wouldn't get worse, Han Xuya and Luo Zhao were unable to feel at ease unless they asked Ling Lan personally. "I'm fine." Ling Lan didn't tell them the difficulty she was facing. She didn't say that her body's immune system was almost destroyed. She was able to stabilize her condition only with the help of the second-generation Nuwa agent, but if she wanted to heal completely, she needed more Nuwa agents. That was why she was covered in bandages. Her hideous wounds were hidden under the bandages, as normal people might feel disgusted if they see it. Han Xuya and Luo Zhao were easy to comfort. Once Ling Lan said that she was fine, they relaxed and started smiling. Well, you couldn't blame them. In their hearts, Ling Lan was someone who always meant what she said and never lied. Thus, if Ling Lan said that she was fine, she was fine. Li Shi stood up too when he saw Ling Lan. He came over and held Ling Lan's wrist to check her pulse. Not bad. Her pulse rate was better than a month ago. Li Shi felt at ease too. He was afraid that Ling Lan's brittle body would get worse when she came out to travel alone. 021, 021? One of the staff members was shouting a number. Han Xuya raised her hand in a hurry. Coming. It was their turn. Ling Lan walked towards the staff member. The staff member looked at her curiously. Most of the leaders were old, so Ling Lan seemed a little too young for the position. The staff member suspected her ability. Come, scan your communicator over here. The information on the communicator would determine whether this young man was eligible or not. The staff member held his opinion back and continued with the registration process. Beep. Ling Lan scanned her communicator. Her information was displayed on the staff member's screen. Zhang Hua, 27 years old, B-level mercenary, freelance, physical skills, late stage of Qi Jin, competed mission. SSS:0 SS:0 S:0A:1B:3C:21D:37E:23. This was the data of the real Zhang Hua. Ling Lan didn't make any changes. The staff member dismissed his suspicion after seeing Ling Lan's completed missions. He was young, but he had already completed so many missions. He even completed an A-level mission. A-level missions were dangerous and risky. Normal mercenaries wouldn't dare to accept an A-level mission. Since the leader of the team met the requirements, the staff member continued, "Where are the other 5 members?" A team needed to have at least 5 members excluding one leader. Me. 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 People started shouting in front of the staff member. He saw a line of young men and women rushing to become the second person to register. The staff member, who was used to handling disgruntled people, was stunned by the enthusiasm of these young people. He actually didn't know what to do. Cough. Ling Lan made a coughing sound. The people that were shoving and pushing each other froze. Thank you. Li Lan slid out of the crowd and moved to the front. He scanned his communicator successfully. Beep. Li Lan, 25 years old, A-level mercenary, freelance, physical skills, optimal peak of Qi Jin, competed mission. SSS:0 SS:0 S:1A:13B:29 C:21D:23 E:2. The staff member gasped when he saw Li Lan's information. He thought that the leader would be the most powerful person among the team, but the first member was stronger than him. He even completed an S-level mission. S-level missions were extremely dangerous. Anyone below the domain stage would have a hard time completing it. Qilong and the others glared at Li Lan. They wanted to beat this sly fox up. Zhao Jun took this chance to scan his communicator and became the 3rd member to register. Beep. Zhao Jun, 25 years old, A-level mercenary, freelance, physical skills, optimal peak of Qi Jin, competed mission. SSS:0 SS:0 S:1A:22B:31 C:37D:23 E:2. Most of the time, Zhao Jun acted with Li Lan, so the number of missions they had completed was around the same. However, Li Lan wasn't interested in some mission while Zhao Jun liked to take missions to pass his time. Hence, he completed a few more missions than Li Lan. The staff member saw Li Lan's results, but he didn't appear as shocked as when he saw Zhao Jun's data. However, deep down inside, he was dumbfounded. Qilong immediately scanned his communicator when he saw that the first 2 positions as a member were taken. His frightening force of presence stopped everyone from snatching the 3rd position from him. Beep. Qilong, 22 years old, A-level mercenary, freelance, physical skills, optimal peak of Qi Jin, competed mission. SSS:0 SS:0 S:0A:4B:21 C:29 D:39 E:9. Once you have completed a certain level of mission 3 times, your mercenary level would follow that mission's level. Qilong had completed A-level missions 4 times, so he was an A-level mercenary. His level was the same as Zhao Jun and Li Lan. After him, Luo Lang, Ziyi, Han Zhejian, and Lin Zonking scanned their communicator and registered. Most of them acted along with Qilong, so their data was similar to him. The staff member was flabbergasted when he saw multiple A-level mercenary registering. Hence, when he saw that Chang Xinyuan was an E-level mercenary and didn't complete much mission, he finally felt that things were going back to normal. This was the data a new mercenary team should have. Those level A mercenary before him must be hired with a high salary. However, this thought was broken after he saw Liu Furong's data. Beep. Liu Furong, 43 years old, S-level mercenary, freelance, physical skills, optimal peak of Qi Jin, competed mission, SSS:0 SS:0 S:0S:43B:129C:134D:63E:42. Say, S-level mercenary. Oh my god, where did this new team come from? Where did all these high-level mercenaries come from? Chapter 970 Little Four's mercenary team. Luo Yi's mercenary level was not low too. He was an A-level mercenary. Soon, everyone finished registering. The staff member asked in a daze, "What is the name of the mercenary team?" Lingshan. In Linglan's mindscape, Little Four raised his hands and shouted happily, "Lingshan Battle Clan, Lingshan Base. They should have a Lingshan mercenary team now." Linglan looked at the excited Little Four and smiled. "Little Four mercenary team." Sorry. The staff member was waiting for a formidable sounding and pleasant name. Hence, when he heard Little Four mercenary team, he was stunned. Little Four mercenary team. Linglan answered carefully. The danger that Little Four went through a while ago made her realize how important he was to her. Although she didn't have the power to let him appear in front of her friends, she could let him appear in their world in another way. Boss. Little Four understood Linglan's intention. His eyes turned red. Linglan rubbed his head with a firm gaze. One day, she would let Little Four appear in front of everyone personally so that he could become one of them. Everyone was surprised by the name of their mercenary team, but no one had any objections. Even if their name was the Cat Mercenary Team or the Dog Mercenary Team, as long as their boss chose it, they would accept it. Hence, the name of the mercenary team that would become widely famous in the future was given with a single sentence from Linglan. Before they left, Linglan reached out and tapped the staff member's forehead with her finger. She smiled. "Thank you." You're welcome." The staff member felt a warm presence in front of him. However, his forehead felt cold. The staff member was in a stupor as he watched as Linglan's team leave the hall. After a while, he slapped his forehead and muttered to himself, "Why am I in a daze?" He lowered his head and shouted, "Oh Tutu." Oh right. The Little Four mercenary team seemed to have quite a few people. The staff recalled the mercenary team that had just registered. Then, he realized that he couldn't remember any of the details of the team members anymore. But, this was normal for him, as he had to handle a few hundred mercenary teams every day. Unless the mercenary team was very special or powerful, it wouldn't give him any lasting impression. After the people with the number 022 came up to him, the staff member forgot about Little Four mercenary team entirely. He didn't know that the Little Four mercenary team's details were now locked by Little Four. That meant that people could only see the level of Little Four mercenary team. They were unable to see the details of the members of this team anymore. Linglan had to nod her head before anyone could see the members' details. This feels good. We can finally go on a mission with boss. Qilong came to the mission corner of the hall. He couldn't contain his excitement anymore, so he raised his hands and shouted. Before this, Linglan never took part in any missions with them. She wanted her friends to become independent, so usually they would follow other mercenary teams to complete their missions. But now, they had their own mercenary team. Linglan smiled. "You only have 1 month." The maximum duration of a soldier's holiday was 1 month. A month later, They had to go back to the military and they wouldn't be able to take part in normal missions anymore. The excited group of people got dejected suddenly. They lowered their heads in sadness. Their identity as a soldier took over their freedom. Only Luo Zhao and Hong Xuaya were not affected. They looked at the mission on the screen together and talked among themselves. They had already decided that they would follow their boss wherever she went. As female soldiers, they had more freedom than male soldiers. The military didn't place much importance in female soldiers so they could change their positions easily. They were not like Shilong, whose capabilities had caught the attention of the higher authorities. If Ling Lan got removed from 250 Ace Mecha Clan, it wouldn't be easy for them to continue following her. Ling Lan knew that this was possible, so she registered this mercenary team. She knew that relationships required time to nurture. If everyone got scattered, the precious relationship they had from growing up together would dissipate slowly as time went by. Even if they were able to gather together again in the future, it wouldn't be the same anymore. Boss, Mission 7821. Mission 7821. Hong Xuaya and Luo Zhao, who were discussing silently among themselves, started shouting at Ling Lan excitedly. Everyone got energetic again and their sad emotions disappeared. Since they knew their mission number, Ling Lan led them to an optical supercomputer at the side of the hall. She searched the details of Mission 7821. Soon, the information appeared on the screen. Mission number 7821. Mission level B. Mission requirements: Adventurer team. Level requirement: none. Mission details: the employer wants to hire a few adventurer teams to escort a huge merchant fleet to and fro the chaotic lands. Starting point: Planet Shanghai from the Huaxia Federation, 8 a.m., 23rd of May. Checkpoints: chaotic lands, 1 week. Final destination: Planet Shanghai from the Huaxia Federation. Estimated date of arrival is the 17th of June. Ling Lan looked at the estimated date for the end of the mission. A few days after that would the end of their 1-month leave. Most importantly, they just formed an adventurer team and their lowest level mercenary was a level E mercenary. Normally, they would only get D and E level missions. After accumulating some points, their adventurer team's level would increase and they would be able to apply for higher level missions. There were no requirements for the adventurer team's level for this mission. It seemed like the merchant needed to leave immediately. If not, it meant that the rewards for this mission were too little, so the powerful adventurer teams didn't want to waste their time and take this mission. Ling Lan scrolled to the end of the mission and saw the 4 pathetic zeros behind the number 3. This proved that the rewards for this mission were not just a little, it was extremely little. This amount of money wasn't even enough to pay the monthly salary of the mercenaries. It was reasonable that the powerful mercenary teams didn't want to take this mission. From the looks of it, only teams that had just registered and wanted to improve their grades would disregard the reward and take the mission. Mercenary teams that were low in funds might also take it to get some money. Ling Lan's team was filled with people from wealthy families in the military, so they didn't care about the reward. When they saw that they could visit the chaotic lands, they got excited. They had only heard about it from rumors. They rubbed their hands in excitement and prepared themselves to gain new experiences there. Of course, there were still people who cared about the money. Wang Qi and Liu Ao's eyes lit up when they saw the 30,000 Federation credits. This is close to 600,000 Maiyang credits. It is enough for us to spend for the rest of our life. The difference in response was due to each individual's outlook and experience. It had nothing to do with the character of a person. Chapter 971 Mercenary Team. It was midnight at the port of Planet Shanghai. A merchant group was about to leave the port, so they were busy loading their goods. In one of the warehouses on the ships, a small mercenary team consisting of 7 people gathered in a corner and chatted among themselves. The equipment on them was old, and the badly bruised old mecha models beside them proved that their journey here wasn't easy. The leader of this team was a skinny middle-aged man around 50 years old. His face showed many signs of old age. He drank the low-grade alcohol that the merchants gave them and looked at the team members around him. He sighed sadly. "I'm sorry, everyone. I'm too incapable For the past 10 years, our situation kept getting worse. Now, we even need to take missions that require so much time and effort, but don't have good rewards so we can fill up our stomachs. Grandpa Leader, what are you talking about? If it wasn't for you, I would have died from hunger when I was 6 years old. One of the young men who looked around 14 years old smiled. He didn't mind the harsh times they were facing. Little Tao, it's a waste of your talent if you remain in Shadow Cat. The leader looked at Little Tao and shook his head in pity. He was someone who didn't have much ability and the Shadow Cat mercenary team would probably remain in this bad state. There was no future for them. With Little Tao's ability and talent, he could go to a better mercenary team. He might even be able to enter an elite mercenary team too. However, this little fellow stubbornly remained here, so that he could repay the kindness of that one bowl of rice when he was young. I think that this life is pretty good. Little Tao smiled brightly. We can take missions and earn money to feed ourselves. The grandfathers in the team take good care of me and treat me like their own grandson. If I go outside, I won't be able to enjoy such treatment. I will probably be bullied by the older members. Plus, if that happens, your heart will ache. Little Tao is getting better at talking. The other old members of Shadow Cat smiled happily. They were all ordinary people. They didn't have many abilities, so they were only low-level mercenaries. They just wanted to earn some money to keep themselves and their families alive. Mercenaries like them were like extras among all the huge mercenary teams. They were able to survive until now because their leader was a careful person, as he never took missions that exceeded their limits. However, this also meant that the level of their mercenary team would never increase. At the same time, their standard of living got worse. A low standard of living wouldn't attract powerful mercenaries. A mercenary team that wasn't powerful enough wouldn't be able to accept the harder missions which had more rewards. Hence, as the cycle continued, the Shadow Cat mercenary team's situation got worse over time. They couldn't even feed themselves properly now. This was why the leader of Shadow Cat decided to take this mission. They didn't have any rice left back at home. He knew that this mission might be dangerous and the result was uncertain, but he could only take the risk. While they were chatting, the door of the warehouse suddenly opened. The person in charge of this merchant team walked in with a few other people. There was a muscular man around 50 years old, a cultured young man around 30 years old, a smart-looking middle-aged man and an arrogant and wealthy young man. The person in charge pointed at the leader of Shadow Cat and said, "This is the leader of the Shadow Cat mercenary team, Yuan Mulan." Leader Yuan is the first to arrive. The person in charge pointed at the muscular man and introduced, "This is the leader of the Grey Bat mercenary team, DB Luaya." DB Luaya greeted everyone friendly. The leader of Red Maple mercenary team, Yi Xiao. The cultured young man smiled and nodded at everyone. The leader of Poison Teeth mercenary team, Zhang Baizi. The smart-looking middle-aged man nodded coldly. He didn't look like a friendly person. The leader of Mighty Sky, Ma Yiz. The wealthy man seemed to look down on these poor leaders, so he just raised his head arrogantly and scoffed. He didn't greet anyone. The three leaders' expressions changed when they saw Ma Yiz's attitude. Among all the three leaders, Yi Xiao and DB Luaya were more shrewd, so they immediately started smiling again. Zhang Baizi, on the other hand, continued wearing his cold expression. He just glared at Ma Yiz with a vicious gaze like the eyes of a poisonous snake. "This will be your accommodation for the time being. I hope that everyone can work together for this mission and come back alive." The person in charge ignored the tension that was going on between the leaders. They only invited these mercenary teams to protect their merchant team. As for the relationship of the mercenary teams, it was not their concern. The person in charge wanted to leave. Yi Xiao suddenly thought of something and shouted, "President Tu, is everyone here?" President Tu replied, "The Little Four mercenary team is still on their way." "Haha, Little Four mercenary team? Who came up with such a weak name?" Ma Yiz laughed loudly when he heard this. President Tu didn't say anything, he just smiled. Names were given by the leaders based on their own preferences. It had nothing to do with ability. Plus, He didn't think that the name Mighty Sky was any good too. Suddenly, his communicator vibrated. He looked down and smiled. "Speak of the devil, they're here." He walked out of the warehouse. Around 10 minutes later, he came in with someone wearing a mask. This young person had a gentle aura. It was Ling Lan. "This is the leader of Little Four mercenary team, Zhang Hua." President Tu's smile was more sincere this time. For some reason, he had a good impression of Zhang Hua. President Tu thought that this must be because of fate. After that, he introduced the other leaders to Zhang Hua. Zhang Hua's presence was gentle, so even Ma Yi's, who laughed at the name of Ling Lan's team, didn't give her attitude. He didn't appear as arrogant and irritating as before. The warehouse was segregated into 6 different sections naturally. Every section belonged to a respective mercenary team. Very soon, the 5 new teams moved their pieces of equipment and mechas into the warehouse. Ling Lan's team was situated between Shadow Cat and Poison Teeth. Soon, the 14 brand new mechas that belonged to them got transported into the warehouse. Ling Lan was late because she was preparing the equipment for her team. Fortunately, Ling Lan had loads of money and Little Four knew many ways of getting things. Little Four found a secret black market and managed to get 14 modified mechas within 2 short days. Of course, a lot of money was spent on it. They even got some equipment for the mechas and spare parts. The other leaders might have looked down on this young mercenary team, but the moment their mechas entered the warehouse, they became serious. They decided that they wouldn't provoke this mercenary team until they knew more about their background. Chapter 972 Accident. The 14 mechas and the pieces of equipment caused the other 5 mercenary teams to become vigilant of the Little Four mercenary team. However, when the members of this team came down from the cockpit of their mechas, this vigilance died down. The members of the Little Four mercenary team were mostly young men around 20 years old. There were even 3 women, a teenager that was still underage, and 2 young children. Obviously, this was a team made up of ambitious young people. Their family background must be good too, since they were able to get such good mechas and pieces of equipment. The only 2 middle-aged men must be their bodyguards, plus, they might be doing it for fun. All of them wore a metal mask that covered half their faces just like their leader. Soon, it was 8 a.m. The merchant team finally finished their preparations. They were ready to leave. It had to be said that the merchant team was really stingy, as the 3 meals they provided were very simple. Besides Shadowcat, the other mercenary teams didn't lack money. They took out their own food and started eating. Ling Lan and her team members didn't like to torture themselves too. Lin Zonking had thought about this possibility, so he had prepared a lot of good food while they were getting ready all their equipment for the mission. After some time, all the team members from the Little Four mercenary team had oily lips from their delicious meal. This just further confirmed to everyone that this was a bunch of young masters having fun. The members of Shadow Cat swallowed their saliva as they watched the members of Little Four eating their hearty meal happily while they had already finished their simple meal. They rolled themselves up to hide the sound from their growling stomach. Little Tao was still growing, so the simple meal provided by the merchant team couldn't satisfy him. However, he still controlled his hunger and didn't reveal any signs of it. He knew that the old men in his team needed more nutrients because their bodies were exhausted from the continuous fighting. If they knew that he was still hungry, they would definitely give him some of their food, and he didn't want them to do that. Little Tao thought that he hid his hunger well, but a few people managed to hear it. Ma Yi's looked at him with disdain. If they had a hard time filling up their stomachs, it meant that the Shadow Cat mercenary team was useless. The other leaders didn't portray their thoughts so directly, but they also looked down on Shadow Cat. No one wanted to work with useless people. As for the Little Four mercenary team, besides the old man, the 2 children, and Aunt Liu, everyone heard it. But Ling Lan didn't look down on Shadow Cat because of this. Although Shadow Cat's situation was bad, Little Tao's actions showed that the relationship between the team members was strong. Plus, she saw Little Tao rejecting the food from his comrades when they offered it to him. Compared to strength, Ling Lan felt that true friendship was more important. Without a doubt, Shadowcat was much better than the other mercenary teams in this area. Ling Lan had a good impression of Shadowcat, but she wasn't planning to help them. From the start, she didn't plan to have any interactions with the other mercenary teams. However, sometimes accidents happen. For instance, Liu Awa. The two children didn't hear the growl from the stomach, but the two children referred to Wang Qi and Liu Ajun. Liu Awa, on the other hand, had her innate talent awakened, so she heard the growl. She gave him a look of pity, as she was familiar with this sound. She used to have similar experiences too. She knew that the feeling of hunger wasn't good. Liu Awa was an obedient child, but she was too kind sometimes. She knew that little Tao was hungry and she had good food in her hands too. Hence, she ran over without much thinking and passed the drumstick in her hand to little Tao. "Big brother, this is for you." Little Tao was stunned. He didn't expect a little girl who was a stranger to him to give him her drumstick. He was touched, but he shook his head. "Thank you, little sister. I'm not hungry." He was very hungry, but he didn't wish to owe people favors. Plus, she was just a small little girl. She needed the food more than him. Ma Yiza laughed when he heard little Tao's reply. "Little brat, stop pretending. Since someone is offering you food, eat it. If not, your stomach will continue growling. It's not good if you disturb our rest." The leader of Shadowcat and the other members instantly understood what was happening. At first, they were puzzled at little Awa's actions. "Little Tao, since you're still hungry, why didn't you tell us? Old people like us can't finish all those food anyway." It looks like he was really old. He should have noticed that little Tao was still hungry. Even old men like them weren't full after the meal. How could little Tao be full? Speaking of which, your team is really terrible. You can't even feed your team members properly. I wonder how a useless mercenary team like yours managed to survive till now. TSK TSK TSK. Ma Yiz shook his head and sighed. He appeared to be pitying them, but his words were sarcastic. Yuan Mulan was furious and his face turned red in anger. A lot of people had laughed at them before, but they all did it behind their backs. This was the first time someone mocked them directly. Yet, he had to bear with it. Among the 6 mercenary teams, they had the fewest number of people and most of his team members were old and weak. If they really had a conflict with another mercenary team, they would be at a disadvantage. Yuan Mulan was able to control his emotions, but little Tao couldn't, as he was young and hot-blooded. He replied coldly, "What does that have to do with you? Why are you being such a busybody?" A muscular man sitting beside Ma Yiz suddenly jumped up and rushed towards little Tao. Little Tao's words had angered him. Liu Awa was in his way, so he reached out and wanted to throw Liu Awa aside. And Liu and Wang Qi shouted in astonishment when they saw this. The gazes of the members of the little 4 mercenary team turned cold. Liu Furong was prepared to get up, but little Tao acted before him. He hugged Liu Awa and rolled to the side, managing to evade the attack. Everyone from little 4 mercenary team relaxed a little. Liu Furong calmed down and sat down. He decided to observe the situation first. Chapter 973. Worth it. Little Tao pulled Liu Awa up. He was furious. "What are you trying to do?" 1. The muscular man didn't reply to him. He just smiled and continued attacking little Tao furiously. Luckily, little Tao was agile. Although he had Liu Awa beside him, he still managed to dodge all the attacks. The muscular man's eyes turned vicious when he couldn't hit little Tao. He suddenly changed his target and started attacking Liu Awa. Little Tao was afraid that Liu Awa would be hurt, so he couldn't dodge as freely as before, making his movements seem restricted. As for Liu Awa, she didn't panic at all. She just stared at the man's fist intently. This wasn't the normal reaction for a 10-year-old who was in danger. Ma Yiz furrowed his brows as he watched at the side. Then, he turned to look at the little 4 mercenary team. They seemed oblivious to the fact that one of their team members was in danger. Ma Yiz was arrogant and he looked down on everyone, but he didn't want to cause too much unnecessary trouble. However, the reaction of the members of the little 4 mercenary team stunned him greatly. Besides the teenager and the lady who seemed to be the little girl's mother, Everyone else was calmly eating their food. Only the two of them looked at the fight with a frightened expression. Some of them even laughed and chatted among themselves. The two beautiful young ladies didn't look worried too. The lady who seemed more extrovert was pointing at the fight and seemed to be explaining something to the other lady. What is happening? Are they not worried about the little girl, or are they confident that she wouldn't get hurt? 1. If it was the first possibility, it wasn't much of a problem. If it was the second, Ma Yi's turned serious. No matter what the reason was, their calmness proved that they were not easy to deal with. Ma Yis wanted to let his subordinate teach little Tao a lesson, but now, he shouted, "Zhang Mo, come back!" Zhang Mo, who was the muscular man, instantly came back to Ma Yis's side. Ma Yis turned to look at Ling Lan and gave an ambiguous smile. "Leader Zhang, please watch over your members if you want to prevent unnecessary troubles." Ma Yis decided to be careful. He asked Ling Lan to bring Liu Awa away so that he wouldn't offend the Little Four mercenary team too much. All the members of Little Four mercenary team looked at Ling Lan as they waited for her reply. As for Little Tao, he took this opportunity to push Liu Awa away. He was the one who offended them. He shouldn't implicate this little girl who kindly came to give him some food. Ling Lan raised her head and glanced at Ma Yis. She calmly twirled the knife in her hand and cut off a small piece of steak in front of her. She placed it inside her mouth and chewed it slowly. She only replied after she finished eating the piece of steak. "What's the matter?" The members of the Little Four mercenary team smiled. It looks like their boss wanted to interfere with this matter. Her nonchalant attitude infuriated Ma Yis. His gaze turned cold as he said angrily, "I've reminded you already. Since you don't mind, don't blame us if anything bad happens." Little Tao got agitated when he heard that the Little Four mercenary team wasn't going to care about Liu Awa anymore. He shouted, "Leader Zhang, this has nothing to do with her. Please forgive her for acting rashly." He heard that many mercenary teams would give up on a member that was disobedient. Little Tao was still young, so he thought that Liu Awa had angered Ling Lan because she gave her food away on her own accord. What a simple and naive fellow. Liu Furong took a sip of wine and thought. However, he approved of his kindness in helping Liu Awa. Luo Yi smiled brightly. He lowered his voice and said, "Little Liu, you can groom this kid." "Why?" Liu Furong was surprised. Luo Yi continued smiling. "You need to find a son-in-law, right? Compared to letting her be fooled by some random young man, why not groom a few talented people now so you won't have to worry in the future?" Liu Furong's expression turned dark. "What are you talking about, old Luo? My daughter is still young." He suddenly understood the worry of being a father. He now had to be conscious about protecting his daughter from being fooled by some stupid brat. Liu Furong had some admiration for little Tao, but now, it was all gone. 2. Ling Lan looked at the agitated little Tao. She touched her chin and smiled as she asked, "What if I don't want to? I have changed my aura into a gentle person now. Why does he still think that I am so heartless that I would abandon my own members?" Little Tao's expression changed drastically. He looked at Ma Yis and his men who were getting restless. He instantly made a decision. He said calmly, "Although I don't have much capabilities, I can still help with small matters. If you are willing to continue protecting her, I'll owe you my life. Anytime you need it, you can come and take it." Little Tao. Yuan Mulan shouted angrily, "Why is this kid so stupid? How can he owe his life to a little girl he just met? Plus, it was obvious that those people would help the little girl no matter what. The little girl might not be important to them, but no one in the right mind would take a step back." "Little Awa, you used one drumstick to get a life. It's well worth it," Ling Lan said calmly. 1. A drumstick for a life? Worth it? What is Brother Zhang Hua saying? Little Awa looked at the drumstick that was still in her hand while looking puzzled. "I'm sorry, this young man belongs to me now. Leader Ma, please forgive him for my sake." Ling Lan really wanted to have a relaxing trip. She also hoped that their journey would be quiet and peaceful. Ma Yis narrowed his eyes. He said coldly, "Leader Zhang, are you standing up for him?" Ma Yis felt that Ling Lan was purposely trying to suppress him. Ling Lan cut another piece of steak and placed it in her mouth. She said indifferently, Are you not planning to solve this peacefully? The members of the Little Four mercenary team put down whatever they were doing and looked at Ma Yi's and his team. The atmosphere in the warehouse turned tense suddenly. A huge battle seemed imminent. 2. The leader of Poison Teeth, Zhang Baizi, had decided to sit on the fence. Yi Xiao and DB Luaya exchanged glances with one another. In the next second, Yi Xiao stood up and smiled. Leader Ma, the child just made a mistake. If you get angry at him, you will be stooping to their level. Come, let's have a chat with all the leaders. He turned and looked at Ling Lan. Leader Zhang, what do you think? Ling Lan smiled gently. I'm okay, I just wonder if Leader Ma is willing to do it. Ling Lan didn't want to create trouble, especially unnecessary trouble. Ma Yi snorted. Yi Xiao comforted him for a while before he decided to sit down for a chat. Chapter 974 Living Harmoniously in Peace. However, Yi Xiao and DB Luaya purposely disregarded Yuan Mulan. They didn't invite him over. This was even worse than humiliating him verbally. Yuan Mulan's face turned red in shame. Ling Lan didn't move from her seat. She gave a half-smile and looked at Yi Xiao. Are you not planning to invite Leader Yuan? Yuan Mulan looked at Ling Lan gratefully. Ling Lan was helping him. If Ling Lan didn't mention anything, he would have to bear with the humiliation. His mercenary team would be trampled upon by the other mercenary teams if he said anything to gain the last bit of dignity he had left. Yuan Mulan was not the only one that was grateful to Ling Lan. The members of Shadow Cat were grateful that she helped them keep their pride. Because of this, Little Tao also decided that owing his life to Ling Lan was worth it. Yi Xiao's expression froze. After a moment, he slapped his forehead and pretended to be sorry. Leader Yuan, look at me. Sorry about this. Please come and have a chat together. Yuan Mulan looked at Ling Lan unconsciously. Unknowingly, he started following Ling Lan. Ling Lan smiled and stood up. She walked towards the area where Yi Xiao, DB Luaya, Zhang Baizi, and Ma Yi were at. Yi Xiao, DB Luaya, and Zhang Baizi narrowed their eyes when they saw this. They got more vigilant of Ling Lan. Luo Yi lowered his voice and said to Liu Furong, your regiment commander is not simple. If he is simple, he wouldn't be able to become a regiment commander of a mecha clan at the age of 21. Liu Furong replied with a proud expression. Look at how proud you are. Luo Yi drank some wine. His gaze turned unfocused. At first, I thought that he achieved all these with the help of his father. Ling Zhao was one of the 10 great generals, so he definitely had the ability to let his son become a regiment commander. When he became out regiment commander that year, no one knew he was Ling Zhao's son. Liu Furong smiled. He remembered how everyone looked down on Ling Lan when they first knew that a young man was going to be their regiment commander. They thought that he would fail too. Furthermore, a lot of people had tried to help them from their dark place before, but none of them succeeded except for a 21-year-old man. No one knew that this gentle-looking person was actually cold-blooded and ruthless. Their regiment commander was someone who would kill you if he felt that you had no hope. Liu Furong remembered Ling Lan's brutal methods in the past and felt cold sweat all over his body. The time when he advanced to the domain stage, he really felt that his regiment commander didn't plan to let him stay alive. Oh right, you haven't told me how you enter General Ling Zhao's 250 Ace Mecha clan. He couldn't understand why that powerful person in the 3rd division let him off. Liu Furong sneered. He slowly told Luo Yi what had happened to him over the years. At first, he was still under the control of that person after he went into 250 Ace Mecha clan. His opportunity to escape from his grasp came when Ling Lan appeared. While Liu Furong was talking to Luo Yi, Ling Lan was met with many questions. The other leaders tried to dig out more information from her, but she just smiled most of the time and didn't reply to them. Hence, the other leaders couldn't do anything but stare at her. As for Yuan Mulan, they just ignored him all the way. Yuan Mulan didn't make his presence known too. He just remained quiet until the end. Ling Lan returned to her mercenary team and sat with her team members. Han Jijian whispered, "Boss, What are the backgrounds of all those mercenary teams? Greybat and Red Maple are strong teams. Their leaders are strong too. Ma Yi's seemed rash, but every step he took is precise. Zhang Baizi has a tight mouth too. Besides Shadowcat, the other mercenary teams have their own motive for accepting this mission. Ling Lance said calmly, there must be something going on. Isn't Ma Yi's mercenary team a new mercenary team? Luoling was surprised. Ma Yi's gave him the impression that he was rash and wealthy. He thought that Ma Yi's created his mercenary team because he was bored and wanted to have some excitement in his life. Of course not. Ziyi explained hurriedly. His team members knew what to do the moment Ma Yi's looked at them. How could this be a team that just got created? Well, unless they knew each other since they were young just like us. Luoling remembered how fast the members of Mighty Sky reacted when they almost had a fight just now. Their cooperation and cohesiveness were not awkward nor faked at all. He nodded. Your regiment commander is a monster, Luo Yi exclaimed. Ling Lan just had a short chat with the leaders, but he managed to understand each mercenary team well. He felt that if more time was given to Ling Lan, he would be able to surpass Regiment Commander Wang. He might even become the second Ling Zhao. They always say that a Ling Zhao only appears every 1,000 years. If that is the case, our regiment commander is someone who appears every 10,000 years. Liu Furong felt that Ling Lan would become even stronger than Ling Zhao, as he was even more brutal and vicious than Ling Zhao. Mighty Sky, Shadowcat, and Little Four mercenary team had some conflict on the first day, but the entire trip was relatively peaceful. Everyone lived harmoniously. They all lived in the same warehouse, so they saw each other every day. After some time, they got familiar with each other too. As for Little Tao, whose full name was Tao Ying, he would come to the Little Four mercenary team whenever he was free. He was 13 years old, so he became good friends with Wang Shi, who was 16 years old, and Liu Aihua, who was 10 years old. The little burden, Liu Aijun, would always follow behind the three of them. The four youths always stayed beside Chang Xinyuan and Luo Yi. They would observe them as they did maintenance for the mechas. Because of Tao Ying, the Little Four mercenary team and the Shadowcat mercenary team had a good relationship with each other. Lin Zonking took pity on the old mercenaries, so he would occasionally give them some leftover parts. The old mercenaries from Shadowcat were thankful. The team members from Red Maple and Greybat always had meals and played games together. Soon, they became brother teams and formed an alliance among themselves. The people from Mighty Sky and Poison Teeth would sometimes join them for their meals and games. All in all, the 6 mercenary teams had a harmonious time, at least on the surface. Finally, the merchant fleet arrived at the Chaotic Lands. The people from Shadowcat heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that the fully loaded merchant ships would meet intergalactic pirates along the way. If that was the case, they might not be able to go back home alive. On the other hand, the other mercenary teams were more nervous when they landed. Yi Shao and DB Luaya, who always had smiles on their faces, turned serious too. President Tu appeared at the entrance of the warehouse. He cupped his hands and bowed at them. We'll have to trouble you for the coming week. As expected, the merchant team didn't hire them to protect the ships during the journey to and fro the Chaotic Lands. They hired them to protect them when they were in Chaotic Lands. Chapter 975 Black Market. The members of Little Four mercenary team took a tour around the biggest city in Chaotic Lands and came back with various information about this place. Just like its name suggests, Chaotic Lands was a place where reasoning was useless. The fist was the most important thing here. There was no government, so the order of the place was messy. Acts of violence could happen anytime. Yet, this place was the most prosperous and free market in the entire Federation. Many merchants and wealthy people filled the roads of the city. Thus, as long as you have money, you could buy anything here. Crimes happened in the Chaotic Lands all the time. If people who didn't have the ability to protect themselves came to this place accidentally, they would be killed almost instantly. The Chaotic Lands and the Lawless Lands were the two places where evil congregated. However, they were very different even though their principles seemed similar. The Lawless Lands was really messy. It was filled with criminals from various nations. merciless killers, and brutal murderers. Every day, innumerable people died. Huge fights occurred all the time. Compared to the lawless lands, the chaotic lands was much more orderly. Besides the fact that average people were not suitable to live here, everything else was fine. The reason no one dared to create a huge mess here was because the chaotic lands was actually controlled by 3 underground kings. They were Frost Monarch, Hades, and Ninja. It was rumored that all 3 of them were Imperial-level domain experts. However, that was just a rumor. There was no evidence to prove it. Out of the 3 uncrowned kings, Ling Lan was most interested in Frost Monarch. From his name, she could tell that he was an Ice Element domain realm masters. Fighting with a formidable warrior who had the same element as her would be of great help. Ling Lan was a half step into the Imperial level. She had tried her best to extend the various techniques in her domain and practiced using them with the various states, but she still couldn't manage to find her breakthrough opportunity. She was stuck at the entrance of Imperial level. Of course, this was just Ling Lan's thoughts. She wouldn't offend Frost Monarch purposely so that she could have a battle with him. If she came here alone, she might do it. But her comrades were with her. Ling Lan wouldn't put her comrades at risk, especially when they were in someone else's territory. The 6 mercenary teams split into 2 groups. One group would stay with the fleet and protect the ships while the other was in charge of protecting the person in charge of the merchant team when he went to discuss business deals with other merchants. 3 days later, the 2 teams would swap. To ensure that the results were fair, the leader of Grey Bat, DB Luaya, suggested that they draw lots. Yuan Mulan agreed with the suggestion. Zhang Baizi and Ma Yi's thought for a while and decided to go with it. Since the majority agreed, Ling Lan and Yuan Mulan's opinion didn't matter. This drawing lots were not the low-level kind where everyone would close their eyes and choose a piece of paper. First, they would appoint someone to throw the balls of paper in the air. Everyone would use their ability to get the order they wanted. Ling Lan didn't really care at the start, but when she saw DB Luaya and Yi Xiao choosing to stay with the fleet first, she had a change of mind. She snatched the last piece of paper with the same sequence as DB Luaya and Yi Xiao before Zhang Baizi caught it. In the end, Little Four, Grey Bat, and Red Maple were in one team. They would stay with the fleet first and then go out. Zhang Baizi and Ma Yi's side when they realized the results of the lots. It seemed like they wanted to be the second batch that would leave the fleet too. Why do they want to stay on the fleet first? Ling Lan was puzzled. It was a coincidence that she chose to came to the chaotic lands, so she was unfamiliar with this area. Little Four tried to find more information, but there was not a single mainframe in this place. Even the communicators here were deactivated, so Little Four's progress of obtaining information was slow. For the first 3 days, everything was peaceful. The 2 groups swapped their positions. It was time for Ling Lan's team to go out. For the first 2 days of her shift, she protected the person in charge of the merchant team as he ran around the market to buy or exchange goods. On the 3rd day, when Ling Lan arrived at the destination with the person in charge, she finally understood why the leaders wanted to be in the second batch that would come out. It was because there was a secret event on the 3rd day. It was known as the Black Market. The Chaotic Lands was already a place where people could trade freely, but a black market still existed. So there must be some interesting things inside. There was a special way to enter the black market, which only the president of the merchant team, President 2, knew. Every year, the method of entering the black market would change. Hence, President 2 wasn't afraid that this secret would be leaked out. The black market was also an extremely dangerous place. Some people didn't mind to kill to gain whatever they want, so President 2 brought the 3 mercenary teams with him to boost his confidence and security. Plus, if the people he brought to the black market was able to gain the liking of the person in charge of the black market and get an invitation the following year, he would be able to get heavy commissions too. He had nothing to lose from this, so President 2 allowed them to follow him without any worry. The moment they entered the black market, They saw all the representatives from all the various huge merchant clans as well as the wealthy and powerful people from the various nations. Those that got the invitation but couldn't come personally would send their confidants over to take part in this distinguished gathering. The black market was split into 3 districts. The outer ring was the normal district. Of course, the normal district was filled with weapons banned from moving out of the various nations. There were also precious minerals and mines, savage beast forbidden to be sold, rare artifacts and national treasures, as well as books teaching special techniques. There were even some secret scriptures. However, these were only the lowest tier of goods. Even mechas from the various countries could be found here. The highest level of mecha available in the normal district was actually the special class mecha. Everyone knew that mechas from a country were banned from being sold outside the country. The inner ring was the special district. Ace mechas from different nations could be found here. Of course, they were not the latest model. If the latest model of Ace mechas were available, the various nations would have made noises by now. They would organize their troops and collaborate with one another to destroy the chaotic lands. Besides mechas, there were other interesting items too. For instance, new supplies, ores, plants. Some products that could only be found on planet Juhao were seen here too. The center of the ring was the private collection district. Military starships were sold here. Ling Lan even saw the Divine Dragon starship in the list of items sold. This starship was just retired from the military and was considered the highest grade starship of the Federation. Ling Lan was astounded. In order to get this starship here without alerting anyone, someone from the higher authorities must be part of this. However, this was not the only thing that shocked Ling Lan. After the starship, humans started appearing on the list. There were men, women, children, as well as the elderly. They were locked up in cages. The virtual screen beside the cage contained information about the innate talents of these people. It also showed their current level and their potential. Most of them were children like Liu Awa. These children had amazing potentials and were prodigies that managed to awaken their innate talent at a young age. They should have grown to become elites, but they were now being sold as goods. They would become their buyers' tools or slaves. Ling Lan frowned. She could accept the other items found here. Even if they were adults being sold, she wouldn't be so bothered about it. Yet, this bunch of children who had fear and hope in their eyes made her feel uncomfortable. Chapter 976 Missing. President Tu thought that Ling Lan was interested in the children when he saw her looking at them intently. He said, "The children here are all quite average. If you want to groom a good subordinate, you can wait for the auction at night. There will be better candidates then." Speaking about this, President Tu sighed. "It's their luck to land in your hands." Leader Zhang, if you are interested, buy one. Save one while you can. If his merchant team had the budget, he wanted to buy one of the children too. He wasn't planning to raise the child as his slave. He just wanted to accumulate some virtue for himself. They should be expensive. Ling Lan was in deep thought. Yes, but it's worth it. The black market has the ability to make these people listen to you for life. They'll not betray you. That's why their business is so good. They have a good reputation. President Tu explained to her softly. Ling Lan nodded. That cadet that died in her hands had the ability to hypnotize people. Hence, they might be someone with similar abilities in the black market. That was how they could brainwash the people and let them serve their master faithfully. Ling Lan was attracted by the items in the black market, but Yi Shao and DB Luaya were not interested in them. They seemed to pay more attention to the people that came to the black market. From this point, they appeared more professional than Ling Lan. They didn't forget to remain vigilant of their surroundings after entering the black market. President Tu was satisfied with their performance. However, since Ling Lan was the youngest among them, he felt that it was understandable. Thus, he didn't blame Ling Lan for her unprofessionalism. While Ling Lan and the other 2 leaders accompanied President Tu to the black market to get what he wanted, the people who remained at the warehouse were having lunch. Most of the time, the merchant team would send them their food on time. But, this time, there was no sign of anyone from the merchant team. The other 2 mercenary teams had their own food, so they just calmly opened their food supply and started eating. However, Shadow Cat didn't have their own food supply. The Little Four mercenary team that always gave them some food was out for their mission, so they could only wait patiently for the merchant team to provide them their meals. A moment later, an unfamiliar muscular man wearing the uniform of the merchant clan they were guarding walked over and shouted, "The logisticians informed us that they are busy with the loading of the goods, so they don't have the time to send food over. Please send someone from your team to get your food." Tao Ying jumped up immediately. "I'll go." The muscular man looked at the other two teams. "Who is going from your team?" Ma Yi scoffed and said, "Forget it. We won't die from hunger if we don't eat one meal." "We don't want the food anymore," Zhang Baizi agreed and said coldly. "Do you really think that we need to rely on you for food?" HMPH. The man's expression froze. He said to Tao Ying awkwardly, "Follow me." Yuan Mulan wanted to reject arrogantly like the other two leaders, but he looked at the hungry old people in his team and said, "Hurry up and go." "I understand." Tao Ying nodded. He was thinking that since the other two teams didn't want their food, maybe he could get more servings for his members. Tao Ying left with the muscular man. After a long time, he still hadn't come back. Yuan Mulan got worried. Finally, after waiting for an hour, he couldn't control his agitation and went to look for Tao Ying in the cafeteria. When he reached the cafeteria, he was notified that the worker who was supposed to send the food over had left long ago. Yuan Mulan felt that something was amiss. He immediately searched through the place with the people from the merchant team. A while later, they told him that they found the corpse of the worker that went to send their food. It was predicted that he had died for more than 2 hours. Yuan Mulan was shocked and furious. He knew that he got tricked. The muscular man that came to their warehouse wasn't from the merchant team. However, he didn't know why the person would sneak into the merchant's base and bring Little Tao away. There were no other casualties found and no goods were stolen. The person's target wasn't the product of the merchant, it seemed to be Little Tao. However, they stayed beside their employer obediently all the time and never offended anyone. Yuan Mulan squatted on the ground and started crying furiously. He knew that the merchant wouldn't send people to look for Little Tao. Yet, with the 6 of them, they wouldn't have any chance of finding him in this chaotic region without any clues. "My condolences." People who went missing in the chaotic lands were never found. Ma Yi's pretended to console him. Zhang Baizi sneered and said, "This is the result of overestimating yourself. Don't come to this area again. It's not suitable for you." "Leader, we can't leave without Little Tao. We watch him grow up," the old mercenary from Shadow Cat said in agony. "If it wasn't for them, Little Tao could have joined a better mercenary team. He wouldn't have to come to this place and everything wouldn't have happened. I will. Even if I die, I will bring him back." Yuan Mulan's eyes were bloodshot, but his gaze was firm. He wouldn't return to the Federation unless he found Little Tao. Yuan Mulan calmed down after crying. He made friends with Luo Yi from the Little Four mercenary team as their age was similar. They exchanged their numbers too, so he immediately contacted Luo Yi and told him that Little Tao was missing. Yuan Mulan didn't know what to do, so he could only plead the Little Four mercenary team to help him. Yuan Mulan decided that no matter what the results were, as long as the Little Four mercenary team were willing to help them, he was willing to do the toughest and most dangerous job for them. This was the only way he could think of repaying them. Luo Yi was guarding the goods outside. He hung up the call with a serious face. "What happened?" Liu Furong was startled. Ever since they left planet Maiyang, this was the first time he saw such a serious expression on Luo Yi's face. "The leader of Shadow Cat called just now and told me that Tao Ying is missing," Luo Yi replied. "Isn't Tao Ying always in the warehouse? How did he disappear?" Liu Furong was shocked. Luo Yi briefly told him how Tao Ying disappeared. Liu Furong frowned. It seemed like the person's target was Tao Ying from the start. But why do they have to sneak in to take him away? Yuan Mulan had too little information on his hand. The two people thought for a long time, but no conclusion was reached. "We need to find our regiment commander." Liu Furong was helpless, so he could only look for the most powerful person he knew. Chapter 977 Heavily injured. Liu Furong contacted Ling Lan, but she told him that it was inconvenient for her to talk now and asked him to leave a message. Hence, Liu Furong texted what happened to Tao Ying to her and waited for her reply patiently. In the black market, Ling Lan raised her arm to look at her communicator. Yi Xiao noticed Ling Lan's actions and smiled. There are interference systems in place so our communicators can't be used. Even if we are just standing in front of each other, we can't communicate through our communicators. Ling Lan smiled in reply. No wonder there is no reaction. I asked my team members to report their situation to me every hour. Ling Lan settled Yi Xiao and read through the message Liu Furong sent her in her mind. She started pondering over it. Little Tao was a normal person, but he had a strong point. The first time she saw him, she discovered that he had awakened his innate talent at a young age too. She remembered all the children she saw in the black market and arrived at a conclusion. Those human traffickers must have noticed little Tao's strength accidentally. They also knew that he was from a weak mercenary team, so there would be no consequences involved if they kidnapped him. Since there was nothing to lose, they had no reason to give up on this piece of meat. Ling Lan told Liu Furong her guess. Liu Furong was enlightened. No wonder little Tao was taken away. He told Luo Yi what Ling Lan told him. As he was speaking, he suddenly remembered that his precious daughter had awakened her innate talent too. He got frightened. He told Luo Yi, stay here. I'll go and find my daughter, Ren. Then, he disappeared. Damn it. His little Awa followed Wang Qi, Han Xuaya, and some other people to the market. He hoped that nothing happened to them. Wang Qi and Liu Awa liked to walk around freely, so they cooperated and managed to leave their little burden, Liu Ajun, behind. Without Liu Ajun following them, and Liu wouldn't nag at them. However, since they were just kids, Han Xuaya was worried about letting them walk around alone, so she split up with Luo Zhao. She would follow Wang Qi and Liu Awa, while Luo Zhao would follow Aunt Liu and Liu Ajun. Besides the two of them, Luo Lang and Qilong came to protect them too. Luo Lang followed his sister, so Qilong followed Han Xuaya. Just like how Han Xuaya was worried about Wang Qi and Liu Awa, Qilong was worried about Han Xuaya too. The chaotic lands were dangerous and unsafe, but the items sold here were good. The price was much cheaper than their own planet too. Some were shockingly cheap. Wang Qi and Liu Awa managed to buy some knickknacks after a while. As Wang Qi and Liu Awa stood in front of a stall and looked through the pile of goods, Han Xuaya had some free time to take a look at the wide array of goods beside her too. A spherical ball with mist coming out of it caught her attention. She walked over and held the ball. A cold feeling flowed up her hand. This was a frost pearl. Miss, this is the frost pearl special to Planet Aelituo. It's very precious. The stall owner smiled happily when he saw a customer. The Frost River produced millions of frost pearls every year. It isn't as precious as you say, Han Xuaya replied calmly. She liked the frost pearl because she felt that it was compatible with her boss. She wasn't a stupid person who didn't know how to bargain. She wouldn't be fooled by a few words. The stall owner's lie got exposed, so he laughed awkwardly and said, "You are a knowledgeable person. I can't fool you. How about this? If you like it, you can take it at this price." The stall owner knew that he couldn't get more money from this beautiful lady, so he gave up this thought decisively and named his price. Han Xuaya looked at the frost pearl carefully. Then, she offered half the price the stall owner gave her. The stall owner gave a forced smile. "Miss, I came all the way here to set up my stall. Let me earn some money. I really can't earn much at this price. I can't sell it to you." Han Xuaya put down the frost pearl indifferently. "Forget it. I hope that you can get a better buyer." She looked as though she wanted to stand up. The stall owner saw her action and shouted, "Wait, miss, do you want to buy more things? If you buy more, I'll sell it to you at your price. This frost pearl can only be used as an accessory. There is no use for it. The price I'm offering you is high enough. You'll not be able to find a better buyer. Plus, there is only one pearl. I can't even make a bracelet with it." Han Xuaya pretended to be nonchalant. "If you are willing to sell it, I can buy it for fun. If not, I don't have to get it too." The owner thought for a moment and asked, "You want more frost pearls?" Han Xuaya raised one of her eyebrows. "You have more? How many do you need? If you buy more, I'll offer it to you at the price." That which is rare is dear. The stall owner didn't bring out all his stock first. How many do you have? Han Xuya didn't answer him. The stall owner showed 10 with his fingers. I want all of them. However, I want them at this price. Han Xuya signaled another price with her fingers. The stall owner's expression seemed even more forced. Miss, this is not how you should bargain. You should know that once there is a huge supply of something, the price will become cheaper. Han Xuya smiled like a sly little fox. You're impressive. The stall owner couldn't do anything. He agreed with the price. It was a third of his original price, but at least he managed to sell all his frost pearls. He had gotten back most of his cost for this trip. Han Xuya happily took the camphor wood box containing the 10 frost pearls. As she was getting up, she saw Wang Qi and Liu Aihua running into the crowd. She got up hurriedly and chased after them. 2 big-sized men suddenly blocked her path. Han Xuya tilted her body and wanted to evade them. Suddenly, a hand appeared in front of her chest. One of the men was trying to molest her. What are you trying to do? Qilong appeared instantly and grabbed the hand. He was furious. Han Xuya looked at Qilong. Qilong nodded to show that he would take care of this matter. Han Xuya moved to the side and left. She wanted to catch up with the 2 children among the crowd. She still remembered that she needed to take care of them. She took a few steps when suddenly, she couldn't move anymore. Wang Qi, who was in front of her, was gone. Han Xuya vomited a mouthful of blood. The force that was gripping her body disappeared. The heavily injured Han Xuya leaned back and fell towards the ground. A warm and strong arm caught her tightly. Xuya. Qilong shouted anxiously. This is the first time you called me Xuya. Han Xuya wanted to tell him this, but she couldn't speak. Blood kept flowing out of her mouth, staining her clothes. Chapter 978 Saving People. Liu Furong arrived at this moment. He quickly felt an unfamiliar domain energy taking little Aihua away at a very fast speed. He hurried over, but he stopped halfway. Damn it, I'm a step too late. Liu Furong couldn't find any traces of the Domain Realm Master. He was worried about Han Xuya, so he went back. Luo Zhao was already giving Han Xuya some emergency agents. However, this agent was only able to keep her alive. Han Xuya got injured by a Domain Realm Master. If Qilong didn't save her in time, she might have died on the spot. Liu Furong immediately reported their situation to Ling Lan. At first, Ling Lan didn't like the selling of humans in the black market, but she didn't want to interfere in anything troublesome. But now, the actions of these people had infuriated her. How dare they touch her comrades? They must go to hell. Killing intent appeared in Ling Lan's eyes. She ordered Little Four to find the base of these human traffickers no matter what it takes. At this moment, the Domain Realm Master who caught little Aihua had arrived at his secret base. He threw the unconscious little Aihua into a cage that was prepared beforehand. His face was filled with anger. Damn it, why didn't you all tell me that there are Domain Realm Masters protecting this little girl? If he didn't run away fast enough, he would have been caught by the Domain Realm Master chasing him. He wasn't afraid, but in order to have Domain Realm Masters protecting her, this little girl's identity must be special. He didn't want to create any huge trouble for his organization. The business they did was illegal, but they wouldn't choose people with a background. Yet, the little girl he just caught was obviously from a powerful background. Based on what our scouts told us, the other party was rich, but they aren't powerful. His subordinate heard him and hurriedly replied, "Not powerful? Where did the Domain Realm Master come from then? There is not one, but 2 Domain Realm Masters. The person who broke through his domain must be a Domain Realm Master too." When his force of presence was broken, he felt something amiss, so he ran away immediately with his prey. This allowed him to escape that Domain Realm Master who was chasing him just in time. Maybe they made a mistake. His subordinate wiped the cold sweat off his forehead as he explained. Then, he pointed at little Aihua and asked, "What do we do with her?" "What do we do? Since we took her, we can't make a loss, right?" The Domain Realm Master frowned. "We must act quickly. Make arrangements to have this troublesome girl sold at the auction tonight. Also, tell the people below to hide for this period of time. Don't go out and source for prey. If they get caught, The organization will not save them. Two domain realm masters couldn't create a fuss in the chaotic lands, and the organization behind them would be able to subdue them easily if they really found their base. However, their organization was afraid of trouble. If there was a background behind the two domain realm masters, a background like a powerful elite family, their organization would quickly abandon them. But that would mean that we don't have the time to assess her. Normally, they had to do a thorough assessment of all their goods so that they could provide clear information to their buyers to make them feel at ease. Right, special type. Some people like to try their luck, right? The domain realm master answered nonchalantly. No matter how bad the goods was, once it entered the auction, it would be able to fetch a high price. He was not worried that he would make a loss. I understand. The subordinate had been doing this kind of business for a long time, so he knew the minds of the buyers too. Inside a house they rented temporary, 10 people sat quietly in the living room. Li Lan touched Little White's back slowly. Little White felt comfortable, but the tense atmosphere in the living room caused him to keep quiet. The door suddenly opened. Li Shu and Luo Zhao walked out fully dressed in their medic's uniform. Li Shu took off his mask and said calmly, "She's out of danger." This was the first time he experienced the power of domain. Han Xuaya's body kept being hurt by the residual domain energy. If Ling Lan didn't leave a bottle of Nuwa agent for emergency purposes, Han Xuaya's situation might have gone for the worse. This made Li Shu understand that he needed to source the main ingredient for his Nuwa agent immediately. If not, he wouldn't be able to save his comrades for the next time they get in trouble. Everyone relaxed a little when they heard this. Qi Long remembered Han Xuaya's weak appearance when she laid in his arms just now. His heart ached. He slammed his hand on the handle beside him and breaking it in the process. "I want to kill that fellow." Qi Long's eyes were bloodshot. Malicious intent could be seen inside them. He looked like a devil from hell. Liu Furong's expression relaxed when he heard that Han Xuaya was alright. However, when he thought about his missing daughter, his face turned dark again. Beep beep beep. His communicator started vibrating. He instantly turned on his communicator and a map appeared on the virtual screen. It had to be said that when Little Four decided to be serious, he was extremely efficient. Within 2 hours from the time Liu Furong reported their situation to Ling Lan, Little Four managed to find the base of the human traffickers. There are 3 suspicious locations. They are. Ling Lan's voice was heard along with the appearance of the map. "All of you will split into 4 groups. 1 group will stay at our base while each of the other 3 groups will go to one of the locations. Please remember that our aim is to save our people and not to take revenge." Ling Lan was afraid that her comrades would be controlled by their emotions and forget the purpose of their mission. Before little Awa was saved, she didn't want anyone to discover her comrades. She was afraid that the other party would kill little Awa to cover up their traces. "I understand." Liu Furong felt touched. If Ling Lan didn't say this, Qi Long might be overwhelmed by his anger and want to take revenge. If that happened, he couldn't stop him. The killing intent in Qi Long's eyes subsided after he heard what Ling Lan said. He resumed his composure and the people around him heaved a sigh of relief. They acted quickly and split themselves into 4 teams. Qi Long was tasked to remain behind to protect the people who weren't participating in this mission. A portion of the people was worried that he would act rashly because of his emotions, but the main reason he would stay behind was that he was one of the most powerful people among them. Those that stayed back were mostly weak and injured people. Hence, Qi Long was given the important task of protecting them. Liu Furong and Zhao Jun were in one team, Luo Lang and Ziyi were in one team, and Li Lan and Little White were in the last team. Out of the 3 teams, the team with Liu Furong and Zhao Jun was the weakest. Zhao Jun wasn't a domain realm master yet, but he was just half a step away from it. He just needed an opportunity to break through. He was more powerful than all the other Qijin masters, and even if he met a domain realm master, he could fight evenly with them for a while. As for Little White, everyone knew what it actually was. In 250 Ace Mecha Clan, it was the most powerful person after their boss. Hence, Li Lan and Little White would go to the most dangerous location Ling Lan mentioned. Chapter 979 Transfer. Li Lan hugged Little White and went to his designated destination. He looked like a tourist with Little White in his arms. His destination was an old village. It was remote and the houses in the village were dilapidated. If the interior of the houses were the same as their outer appearance, they were definitely classified as hazardous based on the Federation's building standard. Li Lan stood at the entrance of a small alley. He looked at the lively children running around with smiles on their faces. He smiled gently as if influenced by their smiles. Many old men and women sat outside their houses and bathed in the rare sunlight. At the same time, they were watching over their grandsons too. When they saw a stranger entering their village, they looked at him vigilantly. As a local of the chaotic lands, this was the normal look they would give to a stranger. If Ling Lan didn't tell him, Li Lan wouldn't have suspected this place. Li Lan commended his opponents in his heart. From this mission, he had learned a lesson from them. Sometimes, you don't have to hide your base and guard it heavily. You can display your base blatantly in front of anyone. Most would think that this was just a rundown village and would never expect it to be a base of human traffickers. Even if they suspect anything, they would think that there were only a few criminals. They might enter the base alone and get caught by the traffickers. Li Lan slowly walked to the center of the village. There were no blind spots here. No matter where he went, there were always people looking at him. These people hid so well that even Qijin masters might not notice these people. Unfortunately for them, they were hiding from a domain realm master. Li Lan smiled. As it was time for the act to start, he scratched Little White's tiny body. Roar. What do you want me to do? Little White rubbed its tentacles. It could finally show off its true capabilities. Roar. Lately, Little White was frustrated. It had to pretend to be an obedient pet in front of Little Ajun and Little Awa. If its master didn't tell it that it couldn't harm anyone, it would have eaten those people that dared to touch its master's friends. Li Lan smiled and flicked its forehead. Wow, you're really expressive today, aren't you? Roar. Even master had never flicked my perfect forehead before. How dare you flick it? Ah, you're dead. Stop. Li Lan scratched Little White's round body. You know Liu Awa. Our aim is to find her. Of course. I don't mind if you eat their treasures along the way. Little White's eyes lit up. I can eat. Well, since this bastard allowed me to eat, I will forgive you for that finger flick. I am not that narrow-minded. Go. Under Li Lan's command, Little White suddenly struggled and jumped off Li Lan's arms. It landed on the ground and started running towards another alley. Ah, Little White, don't run. Li Lan followed behind Little White with an agitated expression as he tried to catch up with Little White. However, Little White was very fast. Li Lan pretended that he couldn't catch up with it because of his weak body. After some time, Little White disappeared from Li Lan's eyes. Li Lan stopped running and panted heavily. He pretended to appear worried as he looked around him cluelessly. He seemingly chose a random alley and ran inside it. When he met people, he would ask them anxiously if they saw his pet. His acting was Oscar-winning. This person should be clean, one of the people who was watching over Li Lan said. Li Lan had been searching through the village for half an hour and he didn't notice anything amiss with him. It's better to be careful. Our superior said that someone provided the wrong information, so we caught someone with a powerful background. He is afraid that those people might come and look for the person. Another person replied. Even if they came, we'll kill them. The person who spoke first sneered. They'll just be our prey. Unless an Imperial stage domain expert came, no one would be able to get out of here alive. That's true. Actually, we used this method to catch many good products before. The other person started smiling confidently. Li Lan couldn't find Little White after more than an hour of searching and asking around, so he left the village dejectedly. After Li Lan left, the people watching over him looked away. Li Lan walked for some distance. When he noticed that the people watching him were gone, a sinister smile appeared on his face. I wish you all good luck. Rabbit is not someone you should offend. His body started sparkling. After a while, he turned into tiny particles and dissipated into the air. Li Lan had walked around the entire village and found a few suspicious locations. He needed to visit those places now. Half an hour later, The particles congregated and Li Lang appeared. His face was stern. The results of his investigation weren't good. Inside the secret rooms under the village, he saw many young children kept in cages. However, there was no sign of Liu Awa. After some time, a white light flashed past. Li Lang raised his arms and Little White laid on them comfortably. He even burped in satisfaction. "How is it?" Li Lang rubbed Little White's round stomach and asked. "Roar. This is so comfortable." Little White said lazily, "I didn't find Little Awa." It had searched all the corners of the village and made sure that Little Awa was not here. Although it didn't find Little Awa, Little White didn't waste its effort to. It ate many things in the place. When it had the chance, it should find its master for a compliment. It had many things in its stomach now. Its master would definitely be able to find something likable. "I don't know what is the situation in the other two locations." Li Lang frowned. He could only hope that the other two teams had some good news. However, the other two teams came back with bad news. They didn't find Liu Awa too, but Luo Leng and Ziyi found Tao Ying. It was an unexpected finding. Just like what their boss thought, he was caught by the human traffickers. Tao Ying told them that before they came, a batch of children had been transported to the black market for the auction tonight. Ling Lan's gaze turned cold when she received this piece of news. Obviously, the organization was afraid of causing trouble, so they decided to move Little Awa away quickly. Chapter 980 Exterminate. The peace during this period of time caused all of them to let down their guards. They felt that with their capabilities, they would be able to protect the weak people around them. They even thought that since there were many domain realm masters on their side, no one would dare to touch them. This arrogant and overconfident attitude caused them to make mistakes and give those traffickers a chance to kidnap not just one but two of them. "I am to be blamed too." Ling Lan took a deep breath and stopped feeling relaxed. Her gaze turned cold and deep, just like how they were when she was in the military. She couldn't deny that she had started to become more relaxed after she knew that she might have to leave the military soon. Her vigilance and sense of crisis also had decreased after she knew that fact. "Ling Lan, this is not a safe place. Unless you become a lady that doesn't go out of your house, you meet all kinds of dangers. Once you let down your guard, you'll cause a calamity to yourself and your friends," she thought to herself. Ling Lan self-reflected. Then, she smiled. She was laughing at herself as well as feeling enlightened, and the lazy aura around her disappeared. Yi Shao and DB Luaya felt the change in Ling Lan's aura. They were stunned. They exchanged glances with each other as they wondered why a relaxed person suddenly became so focused. Beep beep beep. The three teams that were waiting for further orders from their boss all received a message on their communicator. "There's a new order." Everyone quickly looked down. There was only one word. It was an astonishing word. Exterminate. This was a word that represented killing and blood. Even Liu Furong, who was an old veteran who had been on many battlefields, felt goosebumps on his head when he saw this word. However, this was what their regiment commander would do. If someone touched his bottom line, he would mercilessly annihilate all the evil. Everyone gasped and they looked at their targets coldly. This time, they would become the god of death and clean these evils up. "Little White, it's time for you to eat again," Li Lang told Little White. Little White clapped and waved its tentacles in the air. Then, it disappeared in front of Li Lang again. Li Lang walked towards the old village slowly. An old man near the entrance of the village saw Li Lang returning and became vigilant. He wanted to touch the hidden button under his seat to remind the people inside, but he realized that he couldn't move. "What is happening?" The old man was in shock. Suddenly, he heard a clear voice beside his ears. "Although you will still die, I don't want this massacre to be too bloody, or else Rabbit will be angry." Li Lang, who was supposed to be 50 meters away from the old man, suddenly appeared beside him. He had a smile on his face as though he was asking the old man for his favorite food. The old man was not a powerful person, but he could feel how dangerous this young man was. He was definitely not a normal person. He thought about the young man's performance before this, and felt that he had an ulterior motive. The old man tried to struggle free, but Li Lang just snapped his fingers and a black ray of light shot towards the old man. The black ray of light entered the old man's body and the old man started shining. In the next second, the old man exploded into small particles and disappeared without a trace. You're lucky. You're the first person to enjoy my technique. Li Lang's smile got brighter when he saw this. Li Lang didn't need to use most of his domain energy when he wanted to format someone. Ling Lan had been asking him to practice controlling his domain energy. The results were good. Li Lang was able to gain a deeper understanding of his domain technique and controlled it better. He was even able to use his technique without wasting his domain energy. Li Lang walked deeper into the village. Multiple black rays of light shone around him. No matter who touched the rays of black light, they would turn into tiny particles. There was 1 to 2 domain realm masters stationed at every base. While Li Lang walked towards the center of the village, a fat old man and a skinny old man who were at some underground bunker, hugging a naked woman each and enjoying some wine. Just as they were about to have sex with their woman, they felt a strong killing intent as well as a faint and unfamiliar domain energy in the vicinity. Their expressions changed. They pushed their woman away and stood up immediately. There is an enemy. Li Lang's blatant killing intent had alerted them. They exchanged glances with each other and grabbed their gowns. Then, they disappeared instantly. Li Lang detected something. He looked up at the roof on his left and said calmly, "You are finally here." It was difficult for him to find them. It was their base after all. It was easier for them to find him than it was for him to find them. Hence, he didn't restrain his force of presence and allowed it to spread all over the village. He wanted them to discover him. "You know that we're here, but you still dare to come here. Are you not afraid of death, youngster?" The fat old man scoffed when he saw that their enemy was just a young man. Li Lang smiled and didn't say anything. Instead, he flicked his fingers continuously and 2 rays of black light shot towards the 2 old men. The 2 old men waved their hands to block the rays. However, the black rays passed through their sleeves and pierced into their skin. The 2 old men were stunned. They quickly used their hands as knives and sliced the part of their skin which got infected by the black light. 2 pieces of meat got sliced off their arms. The moment the piece of meat left their body, it turned into particles and disappeared. The 2 old men looked at Li Lang with frightened expressions. They finally felt fear in their hearts. What kind of domain was that? If they didn't react in time, they might have disappeared from this world just like their pieces of meat. "Who are you? Why are you at the Hades Palace?" The skinny cupped his hands hurriedly. He no longer underestimated this young man, so his tone was full of respect now. That single attack was enough to prove that this young man was not someone easy to deal with. The Hades Palace was able to make a name for itself in the chaotic lands and did business smoothly because they never provoked powerful people. Of course, they had powerful people backing them up too. "Who am I?" "You don't have to know that. As for why I'm here..." Li Lang's smile got brighter. "I came to kill, bastard." The fat man was furious. They didn't want to provoke powerful people, but that didn't mean that they would bear with them if they offended them. There was only one outcome if someone wanted to become the enemy of the Hades Palace: death. The 2 stomped their feet and charged at Li Lang.